Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library. We'll be joined by Academy Award winner F. Murray Abraham, who co-stars with...
And called migrants dangerous. Trump also claimed the media is not hard enough on Vice President Harris.
She's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing. And she looked very much like our great First Lady, Melania.
The United Auto Workers says it is filing federal labor charges against Trump and Musk based on their conversation. The UAW claims the men advocated for the firing of striking workers. Firing striking workers is illegal under federal law. The FBI is investigating claims made by the Trump campaign that it was hacked by Iran, while some journalists say they received what appeared to be stolen campaign materials. NPR's Jenna McLaughlin reports questions remain about their origin.
Over the weekend, Politico revealed it had received leaked documents from the Trump campaign, including a dossier on Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. The campaign says the materials were stolen by a hacker, pointing to a recent report on Iranian election interference from tech giant Microsoft as evidence. Now, the FBI says it's investigating the matter. Microsoft has declined to comment and would be unlikely to provide private details unless given permission by Trump's campaign. But the lack of evidence of a breach by Iran has raised questions about the document's origins. After widespread reporting that Russia tried to interfere in the 2016 election after breaking into Clinton campaign emails, journalists are likely to be more cautious about this leak. Jen McLaughlin, NPR News.
2 women in Texas have filed complaints to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services against hospitals they say refused or delayed treatment for ectopic pregnancies. These are non-viable and life-threatening. NPR's Kristen Wright reports the women say the hospitals violated federal law.
In a complaint, Kelsey Norris de la Cruz claims after delays, an ER offered treatment to end her pregnancy, but then wouldn't do the procedure. The complaint says she lost a fallopian tube and part of an ovary because of the delay. In a separate complaint, Kylie Thurman alleges she was at first discharged and that her own doctor, quote, pleaded with the hospital for care that came after her fallopian tube ruptured. The complaints are filed under a federal law requiring hospitals provide stabilizing emergency care. Texas law allows doctors to terminate ectopic pregnancies. But earlier this year, a federal appeals court found hospitals in the state can't be required to provide abortions under the federal law. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up 178 points. The NASDAQ is up 274 points. This is NPR.
With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Craig Lamolt. New Bedford Mayor John Mitchell and the city are being threatened with legal action in 2 separate cases. The estate of Deputy Fire Chief Paul Kader Jr. is suing for damages related to his death in December. Police shot and killed Kader after a standoff in Fairhaven. The Bristol County DA last week said the shooting was justified because Kader fired at police first. And in an unrelated suit, City Council President Naomi Carney is suing the Bristol County Sheriff for employment discrimination. Carney says she lost her job because of her age, gender, and race. Sheriff Paul Hero says Carney's position was eliminated due to reorganization. The town of Nantucket is calling for changes to Vineyard Wind's response protocols in case of another incident like the turbine blade that broke last month, scattering debris on Massachusetts beaches. Select Board Chair Brooke Moore says the town is asking for the federal government to require faster retrieval of debris and direct communication with local communities.
We are lobbying hard with our federal delegation and the federal agencies to ensure that Nantucket gets to speak to that, because we took the brunt of this and we experienced the lack of communication. We experienced the lack of a response plan.
Vineyard Wind and the blade manufacturer, GE Vernova, say they're stepping up inspection of the blades using a robotic camera. GE says it plans to use a new algorithm in the sensors in the blades to provide advance warning of a problem. Sunny today, temperatures in the low to mid-80s, clear tonight and in the 60s, and tomorrow looks sunny with a high in the mid-80s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Amazon Business, committed to being a digital purchasing solution for businesses so that growing the business is the main focus and not admin and paperwork. Learn about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH. There's always clap for us, Jim. I have to get the enthusiasm going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Later in the show, we're very excited about this. We're going to be visited by F. Murray Abraham, who's starring in The Queen of Versailles right now at the Colonial Theater. Mm-hmm. You all know him. He's been in a million movies, and he's been on Broadway. He was on White Lotus, Angels in America. Years ago, he was in Scarface and Amadeus. Yeah, so he's a really big deal. We're going to be thrilled to talk to him about the Queen of Versailles. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So Massachusetts is the most expensive state in America to raise a child. The base level is $36,000 a year. That's roughly $650,000 to get them out of high school, and then there's that college thing, possibly. Plus, there's the worry about climate change, especially here in Boston. What will your city look like in the future? How about political extremism? What kind of life can you realistically promise your kid? If we're being honest, there are plenty of reasons why you would be a childless cat lady, in the words of J.D. Vance. One author, Miguel Macias, by the way, do you know he's an NPR producer, by the way?
Yeah, you told me that.
He writes in the New York Times about a complicated emotion he faced as a new parent, regret. Quote, I have come to understand that my abundant love for my daughter and the complicated feelings of regret I have around becoming a parent do not contradict one another. They're both true, and though I can't be sure, I suspect that I'm not the first parent ever to feel this way, he writes. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. I assume we were inspired by J.D. Vance. Do you also grapple with those complicated feelings when you had a kid? Or has the uncertainty of the future kept you from having a kid to begin with? Or on the other side of things, is this the greatest joy? Can you imagine life without your children? 877-301-8970. You got to give it to this guy. The kid's only one when the kid's like 11.
That's right.
And somebody shows the daughter
all I
the
can
op-ed.
think about. Yeah, this is your daddy saying, you're sorry you were born. How do you feel about that? But you know what?
He doesn't, in all fairness, he doesn't really. He says two things can exist at once.
Yes, he does. Because he said he was never a guy that was big into children, and he waited a long time to find a partner, and he's 47, so he's kind of late having his first kid.
And she wanted to have a kid, so he basically did it for her, he said.
To make her happy. But, you know, he talks about stuff that I think is so resonant when he talks about how, you know, for example, he doesn't like to play with his kid. You know, how many times you're going to play Chutes and Ladders? You know, after about half hour playing a Chutes and Ladders, you know, you've had enough, but the kid wants to keep playing Chutes and Ladders.
He said, what did he say, 10 minutes is my limit or something? Yeah, 10 minutes is my limit.
Then he talks about, you know, the kid refusing to go to sleep. If you have a young baby and the kid just won't go to sleep and you've read them stories and you've sung their, you know, all the songs and the kid won't go to sleep. I mean, these kind of things I think make a lot of sense, and especially if when they're first born and it's just all about, you know, feeding and pooping basically, and feeding and more, and it's just nonstop, round the clock kind of thing. I think a lot of people are thinking, oh my God, what the hell did I do?
Well, freedom is a big thing.
Freedom is a big thing.
Freedom is a thing. The things I mentioned, climate change. What kind of world do you bring the kid into? I have a close friend, by the way. I won't say her name. This isn't quite regret for having children, but one time when I won't say how many kids she has, all of her kids were home from college. The day they all left for college, she said to me, thank God they're gone. Do you know who that is?
That would be I.
That would be you. That's exactly right.
But that's another thing that's true. I mean, once your kids have left and you have the house to yourself and you're an empty nester, then it's a little bit rougher when they come back, because once again, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're doing laundry, you're doing all these kinds of things. I mean...
Would you have any doubts if you were... how old were you when you had your first kid?
30.
If you were 29 and you were thinking of having a kid, would you have any second thoughts about doing it now in 2024?
Oh, no. I mean, I absolutely not. Best thing that ever happened to me with my children. That is true. But that does not say that there weren't moments when I thought, wow, this is a lot. But did you read this?
I'm sorry. Did you read the statistic in one of the pieces we read?
Nearly half.
That almost half of 18 to 49-year-olds in the country are thinking of not having children. I thought that number was stunningly high.
Well, I think that one of the things that's changed so dramatically, especially in places like Boston, is the money part. You know, everything is so expensive here. You can't rent an apartment without going broke. You can't pay for childcare without going broke. Things have just gone through the roof so much. I think some people, and let's face it, if you weren't paying $35,000 a year, $650,000 between the time the kid is born, the time is 18, and 2 kids, what's that? 1.2 million?
1.3.
1.3 million? Okay.
It's probably a little less if you have
you could
two,
have
yeah.
one pretty nice life if you weren't spending all that money. I mean, we all know people that don't have children, and one of the things that's great about these people is that they have a lot more disposable income.
But you know what you miss, by the way? I mean, we ought to make clear there's balance here, and I'm sure you've had this experience. I would not give up for anything the joy of having my younger daughter tell me what an a-hole I am on a fairly regular basis. I mean, can you imagine living without that kind of thing?
Here's the thing. Here's the deal we're going to make. We're going to disguise your voice. If you call to tell us that maybe you had some second thoughts after the kid arrived. The number is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Do you have any regrets, especially if you were ambivalent before you had children? There's a lot of pressure, especially on women, to have children, right? That's why this whole childless cat lady thing is taken off, because lots of people just do not want to do it. Doesn't mean they don't have wonderful lives and they choose to have those lives without kids. But if you have those little regrets, if you thought to yourself at some point around, maybe when you got that first realization about how much it was going to cost your kid to go to the college of their choice, and you thought, oh my God, my life is over.
Well, also, but let's add, again, as we've said, if you don't have kids yet and you're of the age where you might, are you having second thoughts, or have you decided this is simply not for you or for you and your partner? 877-301-8970 is the number.
Susan on the New Jersey Turnpike. Thank you for calling. Hi,
Hello,
Susan.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good morning.
You too.
I wanted to just agree with the writer and thank him for saying the quiet part out loud. A lot of people have complicated feelings about parenting. I spent 30 years in women's health, and I think one of the most damaging things I encountered was the myth of the ecstatic new mother.
Yeah.
It's no fun, in the beginning for sure, and there's a lot of challenges along the way, and I think people should be given permission to express that.
So why is it so hard for us to express it? Because as Jim just said at the beginning of this segment, Susan, he was thinking when this kid is old enough to read about her dad's piece in the New York Times saying he had regret about becoming a father. That's like, it is like the quiet part out loud. So why is it so hard?
I think because you're afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
I think that most people have these feelings on some level, whether they really, are aware of it or not. And society has set us up to feel guilty for having these.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
I think that's it.
Susan, thanks.
Susan, thank you for the call. I mean, that is a great point. Ryan from Muncie says, paying for childcare costs more than our mortgage each month. Major reason we are at one and done. And here's another texter. Says, we must be nuts. Our grandson in Tennessee wants to live with us. So we said, okay. He's 14, and these are his formative years. Okay, the teen years are when you want to get a dog, I would say, because the only person who's going to be happy to see you walk in the house is a dog, right? I mean, your children would much rather, for the time like from 11 to like 22, till they have children themselves, basically, they're really not that interested in you after that. But, when you come home at the end of the day, the kids are generally sorry that you came home at the end of the day, because who knows what they were doing before you got home at the end of the day.
877-301-8970. By the way, I just looked up that poll that you and I both quoted, where nearly a half of 18 to 49-year-olds in America say that they're seriously thinking of not having a child. Did you see the update to that? That same group of people who were polled were asked, 18 to 49, what would it affect you at all if Donald Trump was elected? 99% said they wouldn't have children. 877-301. Maybe that number's off by one or two. 301-8970. Caitlin and Clinton text, I have children and sometimes I regret the decision because of the world, global warming, rise of the wealth class, etc. They will inherit. It's really not fair. Speaking of the wealth class, we are going to discuss the incredible 2 hours, 40 minutes delayed Musk and Trump on Twitter, on X last night with Sue O'Connell at noon. 877-301-8970. 89, 70.
Here's a quote from Facebook. I still do everything I did before I had kids. The kids just ruin it. That's a good one. And then Dan from Randolph says, you never think you're up to the task or can afford it, then parenthood happens and you're forced to grow up. And that's true too. I mean, I think it does force you to grow up very quickly. And one of our texters says this writer should not have had a kid. He should be the adult. If he didn't want the child, he should tell his wife to find somebody else. But what happened is this guy obviously got married, or if he's married at all later in life, he's 47 having his first kid. I think the first kid is the shocker because that's the one that totally upends your life. Once you've had one kid, I mean, you're in it. It's always, having two, having three, the money's going to be a lot more. But your life is already upended, so what difference does it make?
Think about the money for a second. As I said, we're the most expensive state to raise a kid. From 0 to 18, it's 36 grand.
Right.
That means you have to make, what do you have to make, $53,000 to spend $36,000 because you got to pay taxes, obviously.
In Boston,
so let's assume
Jim, in Boston, you've got to be making 70 grand to rent an apartment.
Well, exactly my point. So let's assume you have, what does the average family have? 2 kids, two and a half kids?
Children just have to live on the roof.
So it's like $130,000 of income you have to make just to pay for them living until they're 18. On top, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal. And again, we are the most expensive in the country, which I guess is not surprising. More expensive than New York, by the way, which was surprising to me.
And then when you have to send the kids to college, you realize that even though they get some merit scholarships or some big scholarships, it's not usually even half or nowhere near the whole ride, and you are really broke again. It's like going back to when you had to pay childcare, except it's more money, and it doesn't get over. It doesn't get over for quite some time. If you got 4 years in college and you got 2 kids or 3 kids, you have to send them all to college. Trade school, vocational school, Jim, I think is looking a lot nicer. A lot of people that are thinking about having children now.
Listen to this Bruce in Boxford text, then we'll get back to your calls, we promise. We have an 18-year-old that says he does not want to have kids. It's angst about the future, not just costs, but threats to world peace, the state of our democracy, the ever-looming knowledge that climate is changing, things might not be so great in the future. I've been an at-home father, and I think one thing that may change, men may start to think earlier about what being a parent can entail. Denise in Cape Cod, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi.
Hi. What I'd like to express as an obstetric nurse for years, decades, I started helping to deliver babies in 1978.
Wow.
And I've seen the world evolve from just being a mother to having it all. And being a mother isn't enough in this world. You have to be a mother and have a career. And I think that burden is huge when you have a child, when you have the baby and all those hormones are running around and you're expected to just joyfully give that baby to somebody else at 4 weeks or 6 weeks to essentially raise while you go to work. I think that's too much emotion, and I don't think a lot of the women understand that until they have their first child. And I wish motherhood as a profession could be celebrated. And additionally, I don't think we would have much of the societal problems that we have today.
Denise, if it was celebrated, we would do more things for young parents like the rest of Western democracies do, and for whom we do almost nothing. Remember that child tax credit that in a year reduced the poverty rate in this country by close to 50%? What did Congress do? Allowed it to disappear.
Well, Mr. Family Man, J.D. Vance voted.
That's right.
He wasn't in favor. Denise, thank you for the call. I will say one thing. There is one area in which we have made progress.
What's that?
It is in time off when you have kids. I mean, now lots of companies give paternity leaves. Lots of companies give very generous maternity leaves to mothers that are paid. I mean, some companies are still in the dark ages. It's something to think about if you go work for a place and you're thinking about having children. You better go work for a place that's going to give you a decent maternity leave. Just don't tell them you're thinking about it while you're interviewing for the job. 877-301-8970. We're talking about this very brave guy who who wrote this piece in the New York Times talking about how, after his 98th game of Chutes and Ladders, he really is sorry.
We didn't play Chutes and Ladders in my house.
He had this kid. He's not really sorry. He has some regret
he is sorry.
about having the kid. He's not sure he would have done it if he had another choice. Let's hope that she never reads this column that her dad wrote. But in any case, what do you think? 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, as we near the 50th anniversary of the Boston busing crisis, Embrace Boston's Imari Paris Jeffries joins us to look at the roles that both Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King played in Boston regarding school desegregation. Plus, if art returned as an official Olympic sport, in Somerville, there's a gym for that. And we preview the latest event coming out of the New Gallery concert series. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing the latest therapies and cancer specialists who are experienced in your cancer. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. A lot of people asking, when is F. Murray Abraham coming? The end of the 12 o'clock hour. He will join us, Academy Award winner, co-star of Kristen Chenoweth in The Queen of Versailles, right down the street from here. And the person who plays his business associate, who's great, who's a West Roxbury native, Greg Hildreth, is going to be here too. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the complicated emotions of becoming a parent. This is off a piece written by an NPR producer, actually, in an op-ed in the New York Times. It's a series about regrets. I have to say I've missed the other ones. But in any case, are you allowed to feel regret, along with some other things that come with parenthood? Abject fear, hopefully a lot of joy and wonder. And if you don't have kids yet, is the appeal of a childless cat lady or man greater than many would think? By the way, here is Abby in the... Where are you, Abby? Abby is back. Hi. Hello there. I was very reluctant to have kids for a number of reasons. My wife persuaded me. I have 2 wonderful daughters. It was the single best decision of my life. That's a pretty good one. And an anonymous text is not exactly relevant to our conversation. Says the following: just past your billboard on the turnpike. How appropriate the gym is looking down on the peasants. Thank you for the text. We really appreciate it.
Greg in the North Shore. What do you think, Greg?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah, hi there, Joe and Marjorie. I love the show.
Thanks.
And first-time call.
Thanks.
My experience in the long run was exceedingly positive. My kids are just the light of my life. Our kids, and but I got to say, I think like many people, I held a senior position in international business for years, and it was very stressful. And there were days when the kids weren't, exactly what you kind of had hoped for on any given day, but, and maybe you'd lose your temper and just, sort of bark at them and then bark at yourself for having lost your temper. And then, finding yourself weeping as you're walking the dog. But in the long run, my kids are an utter joy. They are pursuing, a PhD in one case and a musical career in another, and they're just a delight to be around. I also wanted to follow on a little bit with your caller of a few moments ago, who spoke about mothers and parents not being given permission to express regret and perhaps disappointment in their choices of being a parent. And in the face of the Republicans, and specifically I'm thinking of J.D. Vance, denigrating people who are not being parents, and that's just one more bit of piling on.
That's true.
That closes down that permission for people who may be struggling a little.
Excellent first call,
Yeah,
Greg.
thank
We hope
you
to hear
very
from
much.
you again. Appreciate
Here's
it.
a few texts. Lauren from Milford. It is never too late to have a happy childhood. Hence, I have no children. Here's a proud childless cat lady in Wheelwright. I would so much rather have a life than children. Hence, childless cat lady.
Here's Dan and Newton. The worst part about chutes and ladders, I think it's directed to you. My kid only uses the ladders. The chutes make him sad. So 98 games in a row of letting them
That's
win.
right.
That's
you got to
a
let
good
them
one.
win. Janet in Chestnut Hill. What do you think, Janet?
Hi, Janet.
Hi. I think that Tim Vance's comment is absolutely the most sexist thing I've heard, since he totally ignores the fact that it's other men, or men generally, that are also not wanting to have children. It's not just women. So are men cat men? He just ignores this whole thing. And secondly, I'd like to say that I, too, play chutes and ladders with my grandson, and he also does not believe in chutes.
That's right.
That's great,
No
Janet.
chutes,
Thank you for
only
the call.
ladders. Here's Brian in Marshfield. 2 kids in the suburbs, $47,000 a year for daycare. Oh, my God. And then here's another one. I do not regret having children. However, I regret living in an upper middle class suburb where the competition is fierce. It's not easy barely making it and having families traveling around the world. That is such a great comment, because people that live in places like Wellesley or Brookline or Newton or Needham, they're becoming so expensive. And if you're not loaded, your children have such a jaundiced view of the world, because people in a lot of the Boston suburbs now are loaded, and it's very difficult to keep up with the travel and the hair highlighting and the high-end clothing, etc.
Look at Ronnie in Danvers. He texts, as a gay man in his 30s who's completely rent burdened, hasn't even started paying back student loans. I have no hope of having children anytime soon, whether I want them or not. So that's not, we've talked mostly about a decision not to have kids. He's basically saying, I don't have a choice because I couldn't possibly afford it.
I think that is one of the big things. The guy that just said $47,000 a year for daycare, my God. Let's go to Jared in Boston. What do you think, Jared?
Hello, Jared.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Sure.
First time big fan. So I'm in my 30s. My girlfriend, she wants kids eventually. I don't want kids. I don't think it's quite there, but I'm just getting to the point in my life where I can even find time or afford to even travel, just to, do things that I want to experience in life. And I feel like once the kids come, nothing against anybody that has kids, like my mother, but, once you have them, it kind of puts all those
Jared,
things
we have a horrible connection, but I really want to hear from you briefly, if you can, only because the connection's bad. How are you and your partner resolving this pretty major divide? How are you dealing with this?
Well, it's kind of just pushed the conversation off to the side. It's almost like we bring it up every now and then it doesn't come up again for a while. So if anything, it's more that I'm holding her back and not bringing this up even more often, making a solid, hard decision. Because, the years go by, we've been together for almost 9 years now. And, in the early times, there was a time where I thought about it. But now as things are getting more and more expensive, it's just, I can't even imagine.
Hey, Jared, one last thing. You worried what this is going to do to the relationship at some point?
I am. Yeah, absolutely. I'd hate to be the one that causes resentment for somebody holding back and for me holding back, and that's on wanting to have kids. But, but I just can't imagine starting that up right now.
Jared, that was an excellent call. I'm sorry the connection was bad.
Was
Thank
tough.
you. Call us again, please.
Here's Michael from Dennisport. Statistics are clear. Married couples without children are much more likely to be happy in their marriages. I love my kids, but they stress a marriage and don't necessarily make couples closer.
Wait. What research is that?
Oh, you hear that a lot. The idea that
childless couples are happier? There's research?
Yeah, I've certainly heard that a lot.
Okay.
And that children do stress a marriage, particularly if there's money problems and who's going to take care of the kids' problems and who's going to stay home if one of the kids is sick. Yeah, I think that they
But
do.
the guy, there's no question there's added stress, not just about the money, which is maybe the biggest thing, but the state of the world. But as this guy attempts to say in his piece in the New York Times, the joy is like There's nothing like it. I mean, I was 40 until I had a kid, and so I had a lot of
Took
experience.
a lot of persuading there.
No, I'm serious. But
Get Jim off the dime.
Well, maybe so. In any case, let's squeeze another couple in.
Oh, listen to this one. This is a sad one. My father said the quiet part out loud, and I can't tell you how painful it was for all 5 of us children. We were teens at the time and not ready or able to fully understand what he was saying. Probably better not said.
Okay, so you asked me before we started this segment to tell a story I've told you and a few other people from time to time. I'm an only child, at which point Marjorie says, oh, well, that explains everything. But this is a true story. My mother, when she was in her 80s, went to one of those, I lived in Philadelphia, she went to one of these things, which was sort of I don't know if it was assisted living, but it was where a lot of older people living in a high-rise apartment building. Pretty nice. She calls me one day and says she's at a cocktail party with 4 of her friends, and each of the 4 friends are complaining about their grown children. And one says, my son is worth $1 million. He hasn't given me anything. Another one says, I have grandchildren. They never bring him to visit. And the part Marjorie wanted to tell is when it becomes my mother's turn to say something, she blurts out, thank God I never had children. And she says, as the words are crossing her lips, she realizes that was not exactly the right thing to say. And she did apologize, but she told me the story, which is pretty grown up, I should say. But do you think that explains what her true feeling was? She should have written the piece in the New York Times.
I think there are a lot of indications of that there were going to be problems early on, Jim. I hate to say. Anonymous texter, I'm 34 and pregnant for the first time. This has all been really weighing on me, not just the state of the world, but losing my independence, lazy weekends, with my husband and the dog, sanity, and money. Hearing from all these regretful parents isn't helping. But I would say to anonymous texter, I would say mostly they have a few regrets and they do worry about money, but I don't think most of them are regretting it.
You know what's going to be good about the J.D. Vance thing, if there's anything? I mean, you would say it's good because it's going to help Kamala Harris, and it's probably true. But the other thing is it's going to provoke conversations, I think, like this, where you don't have to be considered, some sort of horrible person if you decide that you and your partner just don't want to have kids. I mean, that's a decision you can make. Let's go to Jacob in Rhode Island. Hey, Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Second time calling.
Thanks.
I called a while back, and at that time when I called Jim, I actually had 6 kids, and now I'm up to 8.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well, don't call us in a year or so, Jacob, if you know what I mean. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I definitely know what you mean. So I could attest to it also because, it's you kind of find a way to trade off the intangible with the reality of the situation, right? Like we look at what we invest in our kids now as something that we're going to recoup later on in life, however that looks like. We just don't see how the process is that much of a, undertaking. So I love my kids. Hands down, I'll do anything for my kids. But if I can go back in time, I would at least tell myself how much of a weight that will be, and really be honest with myself on that. And I feel like there's a lot of individuals who may have the same feelings.
I think
and,
you're right.
Like another caller said, they're just afraid to express it out. But when I have conversations with some of my guy friends, married, not married, have kids, we truly feel that way. Like, man, we didn't know that this was going to be like that. We love our kids and stuff like that, but geez, so I think it's a fair feeling to have that weight because it's true. We just like to trade it off. It's a trade-off that we're hoping for the future. So I think that does ease the burden, but it doesn't match the reality of today.
Jacob, don't wait till you have your 9th kid to call us again. That was fabulous.
Yeah.
That was really great.
I appreciate it.
Jacob, thanks.
Our staff has found, you may be right and I may be wrong, a 2016 Princeton study and Stony Brook University study found very little difference in happiness between couples with and without children, but parents experience both more daily joy and more daily stress than non-parents.
That sounds right to me.
That sounds right to me. No, I'm wrong. I thought it was the other way around.
Well, it's one study, too.
Kate in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey, Kate.
Yes, hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hello.
So I have 4 kids, and one is special needs, and it is hard. Being a mom is hard. Being a parent is hard. But I would encourage any young couple that's thinking about it, just do it. Being a parent is like nothing else. You will never regret having your kids, the love, and more importantly, I feel like they ground you and they give you a perspective that carries through everything else in your life. It makes you better at your job, because you don't like freak out about little things. Like the perspective that you have on everything else when you're a parent is just it's amazing. And I would encourage you to do it if you're young. Don't wait. You won't regret it.
I wish I had said what you said, Kate. That was great. That was really great. Thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Okay, Michael from Dennis just sent me another quote from a Fortune magazine that says that parents without kids, parents are less happy than married people without kids. But I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is. Americans, especially millennials and Gen Z Americans, are brats. If people in war-torn countries and poor countries have kids, Americans really need to get over their selfishness from a proud mother of 3 teens who bring everyday joy to me and some worthwhile frustration.
That's pretty great. We only have time, maybe 30 seconds. John in Westford, it's got to be brief. Welcome.
I'll be real quick. Yeah, I think millennials are very selfish and fearful. They're afraid of moving out. They're afraid of getting a house, afraid of a career. They even have a term for it called adulting. When you do something like paying off a credit card, something that we do when we're 18 or 20, it's like a big deal, adulting. And another term is DINK, D-I-N-K, double income, no kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
career, a job.
Hey, John, we got to go. Thank you for your call. Sorry to cut you short.
Here's one last text from Kate in the suburbs. I have 3 kids, 8, 6, and 4. When my first was born, I was not overwhelmed with love and joy. I looked at him and thought, I don't know you, and I expected to take care of you for 24 hours a day for the foreseeable future. It took at least 5 days to really fall in love, and I don't think I'm alone in that.
Pretty great.
That was a good one. Okay, coming up, thank you for all your calls and texts. Sorry I couldn't get to them all, but we're going to talk Olympics up next with NBC Sports Boston. Trenny, Casey, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Years ago this week, U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan, ending 20 years of failed efforts to keep the Taliban out of power.
We anticipated our government would collapse, but we also believed that the U.S. would fail here.
In a 4-part series, we examine the fall of Kabul and its aftermath this week on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer, the Unclaimed Property Division, is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, a BPR contributor, and freshly back from 2 fabulous weeks of anchoring Olympics coverage on the E! Network and CNBC out of Stamford, Connecticut. The bad news, of course, is no one is putting on her shoes anymore, so she has to do it herself. So I'm really sorry to hear that, Trenny. By the way, you were really fabulous. You really did a great job. You were terrific.
It was awesome. It was such a great experience. It was really fun. Obviously, I'll be getting it worked into my next contract that when I arrive here, Jamie will have slippers that I can put on that he will have to put on my feet.
Yes.
Do that.
But why? Why was it? Because I had the same impression. I was really into it this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not always so into it. Was there something different about it?
So I think it's a couple of factors. One, I think Paris is just beautiful. You know, like you watch beach volleyball and it's the Eiffel Tower in the background, and they take beauty shots of Paris and the sun. Like there was this one like live beauty shot we took one night when I was tossing to break, and it was like a crescent moon and like, you know, purples and orange and pink, and the sun was setting, and you had like in the foreground the like the hot air balloon with the flame, and in the background you had the Eiffel Tower and the moon, and you're like, gosh, could it get any more gorgeous than this? Like, I wonder now if Paris is just going to be overrun now with tourists who are like, wow, I've never been to Paris before, but I definitely want to go. 2, I think we just live in a time that everything is negative. You know, everything feels fraught with anxiety and what does the future hold. And for 2 weeks, you all come together and you root for Team USA or whatever country you're from. And even if you're not from that country, like, some of the people will remember from the Olympics are Léon Marchand, who of course is the swimmer from France.
Yeah.
He, broke one of Michael Phelps' speed records. The Turkish, I think he was Turkish.
The one-handed
shooter who looked like, my dad on like a Sunday afternoon, like, going to practice with like his hunting rifle, like hand in his pocket, just out. And this wasn't necessarily a great performance, but people weirdly fell in love with her. Raygun, the Australian breakdancer, who,
she's the one who got 0 points?
Yes, and she became like a meme sensation, which I hope she embraces, because it was we kind of belly laughed at her performance. I mean, it looked like something like someone put up a snippet of it on Twitter, and it said, when my 4-year-old says, "Mom, watch what I can do," and then they played the clip. But honestly, it was funny. Like, it was something that collectively brought everybody together.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like there's a lot of those moments anymore. So I think that was huge.
Hannah just sent us a note when you mentioned the Eiffel Tower in the background. She said, imagine if they had beach volleyball with Deer Island in the background.
That's right.
In here.
Big sewage treatment plant.
The other thing, and once again proving how wrong I am about so many things, when I first heard that Snoop Dogg and Kevin Hart and all these stars are going to be part of this thing, I said, huge mistake, going to turn totally everybody off. It's an entertainment spectacle, and they made it tons more entertaining than it would have been otherwise. I thought that was a great decision by NBC.
I mean, snooping around Paris, many of us, I think, thought, oh, this could be great or this could be terrible. It was exceeded everyone's wildest expectations. Like, the number of times, so the way that the show I worked on worked, it wasn't like prime time, right? Where you're having all of these interviews with the athletes, because prime time took place in the evening in Paris after everything had wrapped up. It was like, post 10 o'clock. It was like 11 o'clock at night in Paris. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 8 o'clock in the afternoon here, so 2 a.m. Paris. But anyway, they would have all these athletes come in and talk to Mike Tirico, and then Snoop and Martha would come in.
Oh, they were a riot together.
Martha Stewart, and they were going to events together. And what I think I loved most about Snoop, and I unfortunately didn't get to see the Kevin Hart. It was Kevin Hart and Keenan Bradley, right? Yeah,
Thompson. I think.
Keenan Thompson.
SNL,
Sorry, Keenan Thompson from SNL. Because like when it was on was just, you can only consume so many things, and you do have to watch stuff so you can talk about it the next day. But the Snoop stuff, we use so many little packages of Snoop and Martha like hanging out at equestrian events. Like we had this one piece with Snoop, and I'm not sure if it ever ended up if we were ever able to air it, but I'm sure you guys saw it somewhere, where he's like, I mean, listen, this is a guy who grew up in South Central LA. He's not exactly familiar and comfortable with horses. And so he goes up and he starts like feeding the horse a carrot. You could see he has anxiety, and then the horse kind of comes in and Snoop jumps back. And, Martha Stewart, sort of like calms him down, and he makes a funny quip about it. And then they're sitting in the stands, and they have them both mic'd up, and they do a dressage, which is where the horses dance. And the way that you train a horse to dance in dressage is you tap the horse with either, either with your hand or like, I don't want to say a whip because that's not what it is, but a little crop. And Snoop says, and it was one of the funniest clips I saw, he goes, man, I can't believe those horses memorized that routine. And Martha Stewart, like, she pauses for a second, like, lets it sink in, and she goes, well, I don't think they memorized the routine, Snoop. And there was another one where he was in the pool with Michael Phelps, and he clearly like barely knows how to swim. He's like keeping his head above water, like doggy paddling the whole time. It humanized it in a way that I think a lot of people, a lot of us watch the Olympics and we think, I even saw something with Ahmad, and I'm forgetting Ahmad's last name. He's one of the hosts. He used to work in San Francisco, and he was on primetime, Ahmad Fareed. And they had him run the 100-meter dash. And it's just like, they juxtapose it against the actual athletes doing the 100-meter, race. And you just think about, wow, I wonder how I would do. And then you see Ahmad, and you're like, I wouldn't come close. Like, I wouldn't be close to these world-class athletes. I just thought it was brilliant the way they mixed that in. It was really good, and it was super fun.
So we're going to get back to
Closest I got to Snoop, by the way, was a cardboard cutout in the Stanford lobby.
Closer than we got. We're going to talk about more of the highlights, but can we talk about the lowlights for a second?
Oh, Jim's favorite parts.
Do you have any insight as a top sportscaster in Boston what the Jason Tatum virtually not playing real story is? I have to say, I've read everything. I feel horrible for this guy, not that he needs my sympathy. He just won a world championship. He's making $60 million a year. It was humiliating.
So my husband was talking about this, and apparently LeBron was caught, and I don't know if it was verified or not, but there is a clip of LeBron like caught on a hot mic talking to Kevin Durant, where he basically slams Steve Kerr. And it's like, I can't believe...
The coach.
Yeah, the coach. I can't believe Jason Tatum isn't playing. And Kevin Durant goes, well, we're going to win gold anyway. And he goes, I know, but not because of the coach. Now, whether or not, that has been verified, but I think that at least encapsulates what a lot of us were thinking. I don't know if it's because, Jason Tatum's shot was a little off in the postseason. Did Steve Kerr see something with his shot that he didn't trust him there, where he needed him to be more of a scorer? But Jason Tatum is such a good defender. At the very least, like, he did play a fair amount in that game against France. It was the 2 games against Serbia, where he didn't play at all. Yeah, where he didn't play at all. So I don't know if it was a matchup thing. I don't know if it's a Steve Kerr hates the Celtics. I can't imagine that Steve Kerr would want to risk winning gold by not playing Jason Tatum for some sort of petty grudge. I have to imagine that it was, in his mind, a matchup thing. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton hardly played at all. I don't know if you guys saw his post.
No.
His social media post. He's an Indiana Pacer. And he had a hysterical post, and he's holding his gold medal, and it's a selfie, and he goes, when you don't participate in the group project, but you still get an A, because he didn't play at all, and he got a gold medal, and it was a great line. I mean, and Tyrese Halliburton's a really great player. I think the Tatum thing, though, coming off winning an NBA title, of course, and being like 3 votes shy of winning NBA MVP, it's just a more glaring omission. But then you see what Steph Curry did.
Oh, my God, that last game was unbelievable.
And it's like... how do you argue with what Steve Kerr did? Like he went, and they're not apples for apples either. Steph Curry is a different player. You wouldn't sub in Jason Tatum for Steph Curry. I don't think that's how that would go. But he should have played probably more. The only other thing I can think of, guys, is like, maybe it comes out because Jason Tatum certainly didn't seem perturbed by it in any way, shape, or form. Maybe he was tired. Maybe there's a lingering, nagging injury that he's like, hey, if there's time for... I mean, I don't know. I'm curious what ends up coming out.
It's one thing to play him a little. It's another thing to play him not at all.
I know, in those 2 games.
So let's talk about Tara Sullivan, that's her name, the reporter for the Globe. She's a great sports writer, had a really moving piece about Brittany Griner reacting to the national anthem being played. And Brittany Griner, people know, was in a Russian prison
colony,
for many months when she was arrested over there for having some vape materials. Vape cartridge from marijuana thing. Anyway, tell us about her.
Yeah, really quickly, if you don't know who Brittany Griner is, she's a WNBA player who played professional basketball in Russia when the WNBA season wasn't in season to make extra money. When she went over, vape cartridges were found in her suitcase. She was then imprisoned, I believe, for 10 months.
I think that's right.
10 months in a penal colony in a Russian prison. She said she'll never travel outside of the country unless it's with Team USA ever again. Team USA actually had some practice games in Belgium, and she mentally just could not bring herself to even go to Belgium. So it really took a lot for her, I think, mentally and physically to go to Paris with her team. And so when Team USA won gold in thrilling fashion, I mean, if that shooter's foot is, a half inch further back, we're talking about a tie game instead of a 1-point win, and France maybe has a chance to upset Team USA.
I don't mean to do this in a sexist way, but they play like men now. They look like men out there.
That is fairly sexist.
It is sexist, but they're
dynamic.
They're the 3-point shooting and the dribbling and everything else, and that French kid Williams that got that almost 3-point.
Yeah, I think it's Gabby Williams, right?
Gabby Williams. I don't know. But they're so talented. They're also good looking. It's like a parade of endlessly gorgeous
Let's talk
people.
about the swimmers' bodies for a few minutes.
God, right?
Okay, I want to mention other things.
I was always in the track stars
But anyway,
myself.
Brittany Griner was very visibly emotional, crying very hard. And just to see her in the appreciation she has for being able to play for Team USA was really on full display on the podium. There are other moments, like I think about Lee Kiefer, who went to the University of Kentucky. She's a fencer. When they won, Team USA won the first ever or first in like 100 years, team gold for fencing. For men or women, and she was sobbing on the podium. I mean, it's really something. Even the basketball players, the male basketball players who make tens, hundreds, some of these guys, all those guys are hundreds of millionaires, they make hundreds of millions of dollars, and they are so truly moved. Novak Djokovic for winning for their country. It's a really, it's a beautiful
He was in
moment.
tears too.
Oh, he was.
Can we talk
he was
about
sobbing.
women? Forget Djokovic for a couple of seconds.
Cindy McLaughlin-Levrone, whatever.
Levrone, yep.
Yeah, she was on the American track star.
Let's talk about some lesser
She was winning
known-
like Secretariat in her gym. She was
I
like
know,
all
like
alone.
like a whatever machine.
They actually talked about that she was so far ahead that she was like Secretariat.
Well, there you go. That's how Marjorie got sucked in. They mentioned Secretariat.
That's right. They knew that I was watching.
How did Secretariat remember how to run like that?
Yeah,
It was
I don't know.
incredible. So let me tell you what some of my favorites are, lesser known. When I was watching you that day, I mentioned this last week to you, the cycling American
Kristen
woman
Faulkner?
who was at Harvard for a
Yeah.
little
Obsessed.
while, out of nowhere wins that thing. That was spectacular.
Spectacular. And then
The
she
two-
went and she helped lead the team to the indoor
I
track
didn't know
gold.
that. And then
So she
the
won two gold medals, and she's only been cycling for 7 years.
The
Like,
two
that's
women
wild.
who were made miserable, the boxers, because of those false charges around
Yeah.
gender, they both won gold medals. Am I
Yes.
not right about that?
I know for sure the
Well, Khalif
Algerian
definitely
won.
did. I thought
Khalif definitely won gold.
Yeah.
That was the one that I think got more publicity because of the way that the Italian boxer reacted to her and the stink that was made. Did you guys know boxing is actually, because of the issues with the different federations, it's not going to be in the LA Olympics. It's not one of the sports included in the LA Olympics.
Really?
I did not know that.
I'm
Yeah.
stunned. Katie Ledecky obviously
Oh.
celebrated more medals than any woman in Olympic history.
Yes,
Am I right about
yes,
that?
she
Which-
passed Jenny Thompson.
So could you explain briefly, and it's got to be brief, and let's just also, one other group of women need to be celebrated. The women's soccer team obviously won the gold medal.
Yes.
They beat Brazil 1-0 after 10 minutes of overtime. Here's a little bit of the, or whatever that's
Stoppage
called.
time.
Stoppage time, thank you. Here's a little bit of the call of the end of the game. Or not, in any case.
Gold, glorious gold for the United States. 12 years and a day since their last. After languishing on the nursery slopes, now they are back on top of the mountain. They are once again the gold standard.
We could have done without the nursery slopes. I didn't hear that before. Jordan Childs, could you explain briefly what's going on with this bronze medal in the floor exercise?
Okay, so the floor exercise was very tightly contested. It was 1/10 of a point that she needed. So she needed a 13.7 plus to win bronze. And when her score was first flashed up, it was a 13.66. I did not know this, but you can challenge this happened in artistic swimming as well to the U.S.
Whatever
Women's
that
Artistic. It's like synchronized. We used to call it synchronized swimming. It's now called artistic swimming. You can challenge certain aspects of the score. So Team USA has 1 minute to challenge. They claim they got their challenge in under 1 minute, saying that the difficulty score assigned to her was too low, that they misranked it. However, I don't know if that's the correct terminology. And so they adjusted her score. She gets a 13.766. She gets bronze. It's historic. She wins a bronze medal. Simone Biles wins silver. And then the young woman from Brazil wins gold. It's the first all-black podium ever in women's gymnastics.
And there was the moment when
and there was
Biles
this really
and
cool
Childs bowed
moment,
down
yes, because
to the gold medal
to the
winner.
gold medalist, because she's
was
phenomenal on the floor, and she overtook. I mean, Simone Biles had dominated floor exercise. I mean, winning gold in just about everything in her entire career, except for when she missed that in Tokyo. And so it was this beautiful moment. And then Romania, who lost out on the bronze medal, to Jordan Childs, goes back and they file their own appeal that the Team USA didn't get it in enough time, and now Team USA has asked Jordan Childs to return her bronze medal.
Isn't that awful?
It's terrible. It's terrible for her because it's not her fault. It's terrible. The whole system is a joke. Like, I mean, I don't know how to make it right, because so what happens is, and what makes it more complicated, I think, if Jordan Childs would then take fourth, I think you could maybe finagle that both of them would just get the bronze medal,
I accept that.
which they do in wrestling, judo, a lot of the combat sports. Bronze medal, they both get a medal. It's gold and silver that you compete for. So you could do that. But with that 1/10 of a point drop, it drops Jordan Childs to fifth. So then you have a person in the middle who took fourth place, which then further complicates the situation. It's unfortunate for her. You take away this unbelievable moment. And I know that, like, at the end of the day, she won team all-around gold. She's a part of this historic team. She's, part of the Golden Girls. But it's just, that's what's so frustrating about these judged sports, is that it's very subjective, and there's all these little rules and regulations. So I don't know what's going to happen. They have said, I just read this morning on CNN, that Team USA has been told that they can't hear their appeal because they already had an appeal. There's all these things.
They're going to go to court, I'm sure.
It's probably. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's going to be like the figure skaters, because of that the Russian skater at the Winter Olympics in Beijing. The Team USA figure skaters just got their team all-around gold in Paris almost 2 years later because of a similar. But that situation was to do with doping. This is a judging error.
Yeah.
It's just like, you don't want, the Romanian girl doesn't deserve it, but neither does Jordan.
Okay, so Marjorie does not want me to bring up the pole vaulter who knocks off the bar with his thing, so we won't talk about that.
The French, have you watched? You guys, there's some
I've
funny
only watched
memes
it
about that.
40 times, by the way.
Yes.
But we won't talk about that. Just watch it yourself if you don't know what
Yeah,
I'm
if you haven't seen
about.
it, just search French pole vaulter, and it'll come up.
Believe me, it will. One last thing,
How
though.
about the local guy? It'll come up.
Well, forget local. I want to talk about the reason we've talked about the Olympics and the World Cup a lot on the show with Andrew Zimbalist from Smith College, who's one of the world experts on the financing thing. One of the reasons Western nations generally don't bid for the games is because they lose so much money. The theory is that it would cost $8.2 billion, sixth most expensive. I disagree with you respectfully about, a lot of hosts say, well, it brings so many more tourists. Who is going to Paris who wasn't going to Paris to begin with? But there was almost no discussion about whether France or Paris are being left with a bill. Do we know if there was an overage or not?
I don't. And I do think the one thing about holding them in Western nations, and I did just read this today, LA is going to use all existing structures.
Yeah, they did that before.
That's why they didn't lose money in the last Olympics.
Yeah, they're not going to build new structures.
That's
and
great.
Even in Paris, they use Yves Dumanoir Stadium was used in the first Olympics that Paris hosted third Olympics Paris hosted prior to this in 1924 as a 100-year-old stadium that was used for field hockey, and they used it again. The Stade de France is where their national soccer team plays. And that's where they held track and field and rugby. I mean, they used existing for pool play. They use a lot of existing. The Grand Palais was used for fencing, and then I think
that's a responsible
boxing
thing.
and comedy. So
great.
that, I think that to me is, if you are a Western city that has a robust economy already, like a Los Angeles, like a New York, like a Paris, like a Boston. I don't know that you get hit quite, and I don't know for sure, it's just a guess, but that, a lot of the big bills come, like I remember a lot of the issues come, especially I can remember in Rio, this was an issue, I think this was a big issue in Sochi, where you just don't have the infrastructure, and you're spending all this money to build these temporary structures. I read today, they're going to house, the Olympic Village is going to be held it's going to be the campus of UCLA. So you put them in dorms that are already there, existing structures. I don't think they're going to build anything additional in LA, except they are going to really push. They're calling it the No Car Olympics.
Yeah, let's see about that.
We'll see about that in Los Angeles.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being
attempted to intimidate and threaten its members in violation of federal union protections. The charges announced today stems from a 2-hour conversation Trump and Musk had on Musk's social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter, last night. NPR's Bobby Allen reports on other issues Trump addressed.
Trump told Musk if he hadn't turned his head during the assassination attempt, he would not be warships to the region. Israel's military says it's increased its Air Force patrols over Lebanon and is striking there every day. Israel's Air Force has ordered its service members not to travel abroad at this time, as the military says it's at, quote, peak readiness in offense and defense. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
You're listening to NPR.
From the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health will hold a public hearing tonight on the closure of Kearney Hospital in Dorchester. Kearney is owned by bankrupt Steward Healthcare, which has said there were no qualified bidders looking to buy the hospital. Katie Murphy, the president of the Massachusetts Nurses Association, says they'll be at the meeting.
So we are appearing at that hearing along with many of other people to voice our belief that this will devastate a community, the largest neighborhood in Boston, and that the state and the legislature.
The 80s mostly clear tonight and in the 60s, and tomorrow looks sunny with a high in the mid-80s. Right now, a chance of showers and thunderstorms possible on Thursday. This is GBH.
What if you could...
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include USPS, dedicated to providing businesses with shipping options, working to help businesses turn shipping into an advantage with USPS Ground Advantage. Learn more at USPS.com/advantage.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you very much. Just in a little bit, we're going to be joined by Oscar winner F. Murray Abraham. He's starring in The Queen of Versailles over the Colonial Theater in Boston, pre-Broadway. You remember him from a million shows on television, movies, plays, Amadeus, Scarface, Angels in America, White Lotus, etc., etc.
And a local guy, Greg Hildreth, who is one of the leads there, too. He will join us. You know, before we introduce our next guest, we told you that once the legislature went on its 5-month vacation, every single day, most likely at noon, we'll spend a minute on a major piece of legislation that they were obviously too busy to deal with. Today's is this medical aid in dying legislation. You all know about it. What's most significant, I mean, this is where, with a doctor's prescription and lots of rules and regulations, under very limited circumstances, a critically terminally ill patient can decide to end their life. What's most significant about this, Marjorie, is that 2/3 of the people in Massachusetts support this question, yet it was too, I guess, irrelevant or not important enough to the legislature to even take it up for a vote.
Yeah, it cleared one legislative hurdle, getting on a committee, but didn't make it to a vote. And a version of this legislation has been filed every 2-year session since 2008. And Democrats who control the House and Senate have never brought it forward for a vote.
Despite, again, 2/3 support from adults in the state.
Once again, where are they now, the legislators?
5-month vacation.
They're on vacation.
So in any case, we're joined now at the library by our favorite local woman.
And I'm just pretending to be on vacation.
Sue O'Connell. She is are you on vacation?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
But I'm not, I told Marjorie.
I haven't even introduced her yet.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, fine. She is co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News. She's either on vacation or not. Co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30, following Meet the Press, and in a couple of days, leaving for Chicago for the Democratic National Convention broadcast for NBC 10 Boston. So now you may say if you're on vacation or not.
Well, I'm showing up strategically at work so that they see me, and then if they don't have anything for me to do, I look busy, and then I leave.
I like it. Okay. I like your style there, Sue O'Connell.
They're listening, but they're
okay. They don't know.
They don't know.
Okay, we're going to start playing a little clip of former President Trump. He was being interviewed by Twitter owner
Interviewed
Elon
is too strong
Musk.
a word,
Okay,
by the
they
way.
were chatting. Let's put it that way. And it was another botched thing where it started 45 minutes late. This happened before when Musk was going to talk to Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, who was then running for president. He endorsed him before he moved to Trump. Trump sounds a little odd in this particular clip. He sounds like he has a lisp when he's talking about Biden. I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, here's the clip. Is it coming?
We're having some sound problems
It's
today.
frozen.
We should
Okay.
just say, throughout this, I listened to a lot of this. Lisping, that may be a technological thing. A lot of slurring of words. The exact same thing the press was all over with Joe Biden. And by the way, I read almost every single story in responsible media about this conversation last night. I'd say 50% of them didn't mention what my major takeaway was, that again, this is a guy having trouble finding his words, enunciating his words, the exact same kind of thing that so much of the press was targeting, I think correctly, frankly, at Joe Biden.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of double standards that happened with this. Number one, for me, my reaction was it was 40 minutes late. getting going. Now, remember Trump on stage at the Black Journalists Association, how he complained that they were late and he went off and he was not screaming, he was angrily in a hostile way, saying how unprofessional they were and how late he was, and then he's sitting there with Elon Musk on this, X broadcast system, which has yet to work, by the way. But don't worry, he's in charge of all the missiles and all the satellites and everything in our cars, but that's fine. And so, you had these technical problems that they have yet to fix. I think Elon Musk was, frankly, not being truthful about what was happening. As somebody said, he said that they were under some sort of cyber attack and that's why they were having problems. And someone else said, yes, but only that one particular thing was being disrupted.
The rest of Twitter was fine.
The rest of Twitter was fine. So the hypocrisy of not calling out, if you're going to call out the National Black Journalists Association for being late and having technical problems, then you should be calling out Elon Musk. And he didn't sound, even if you take into account that perhaps there were technical problems, and we all know if you're in this business, you sound different on different microphones and different things, and satellites and all of that.
Not the slurring, though.
Not the slurring and not the not making any sense, which continues with Trump. And, Elon Musk is just... Don't call it an interview. If he's not a journalist, he's not an interviewer. If you want to sit and say, I'm having a discussion with this candidate, call it a discussion, but it was in no way, there was no pushback on I don't think there was any pushback.
By the way, remember when it failed in similar fashion with DeSantis announcing his here's what Trump put on Truth Social.
We've got it now. The thing is working if you want to play the clip.
Well, the DeSantis Twitter launch is a disaster, wrote Trump. His whole campaign will be a disaster. Watch. By the way, Andy Borowitz, our favorite satirist, his headline this morning, Trump and Musk share tips on running companies into the ground, which is essentially what they,
Andy Borowitz is so clever. Can we play the clip now?
Well, it's a little, I don't know. No, because...
We can't?
Well, sure, go ahead.
Let's play
You broke every record in the book with so many millions of people, and it's an honor. We view that as an honor. And then you do want silencing of certain
That's enough
voices.
of that. It's a dentures issue. It's either a technological issue or a
dentures.
You have loose dentures.
He's got loose dentures.
Yeah, but that's not...
You think he wears dentures?
Absolutely. He's got TV teeth. You don't have TV teeth unless you have dentures.
Well, he could have implants.
Well, you have TV teeth. You're
no,
on
I
TV.
don't. I was actually just talking to Jamie, your
about
illustrious
your teeth?
producer, about how I wouldn't want to make fun of Trump's TV teeth because I want TV teeth. So if I get my new TV teeth and I'm slurring...
You don't want anybody making fun of you either.
I thought,
okay.
I don't make fun of his color.
Just got the Crest white strips and they went a little overboard.
Oh, no.
Is that not what they do?
No.
Okay.
So can we stay on this for 1 second? We had this discussion with Art Kaplan yesterday about one of my pet peeves, that because of this stupid notion of the Goldwater rule, where a psychologist, I think shrinks to, I'm not sure, can't, quote, diagnose someone who they don't have a direct relationship with. My position continues to be, you have a responsibility in the media to talk about these cognitive issues, whether it's Biden, Trump, or whoever. You can say, as you should, I have not examined him, so I'm not diagnosing him, but you're making observations about the elements that are generally attributed to cognitive decline. And as I said, I think those were fair criticisms, and luckily they came when they did of Joe Biden. And I think it's fair for people with expertise, like experts on anything, to comment on Trump's performances.
Right. I mean, I think that Trump's comments, his Twitter, his posts about Kamala Harris' crowd size at the plane, saying that it was artificial AI, artificial intelligence, when it obviously was not. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people, human beings, who were there. So, to your point, Jim, is that just an election lie that he's telling because he thinks it's going to get him ahead? Or does he really believe that? And if he really believes that, is that a symptom of something that you would be worried about having a president of the United States who thinks that thousands and thousands of people actually weren't there?
Well, let me just say one last thing. One of the criticisms that made me nervous with Joe Biden, he would often lose his train of thought mid-sentence. What we played the other day, the Cary Grant sound from Donald Trump, often in the middle of a sentence, he goes in a totally different direction. And if you go back, which I have done, and listen to him in 2022, 2020, 2016, and before, he is a man who's aging, which is perfectly fine, but the issue of his cognitive decline, in my estimation, is fair game. Both journalists and people with professional skills should be talking about it. Can we talk about my hometown of Cambridge?
Things have fallen apart, Jim, since you were there at the city council getting the free food from the S&S deli.
Well, wasn't necessary. Thank you. I was getting the free food because it was provided to all members of the council who worked very hard.
That's where my mother's wedding shower was, at the
S&S deli.
Is that true? Love the S&S deli.
The story was at the Cambridge City Council, you had to make sure you got there when there was somebody actually sitting at the council table, because mostly they were behind the curtain eating all the free food from the S&S deli.
It wasn't a curtain, it was a back room. It was a back room. During public comment at the beginning of the meeting, we had one member of the council out there listening or
and the other 8
semi-listening. The 8 were filling their shopping bags with feeding all the people in their neighborhood, particularly their own families, on taxpayer dime. I didn't do that, but others did.
I'm sure you didn't.
So I have to say, first of all, Ellen Zucker is arguably one of the best lawyers on the planet.
Lawyer.
She has sued Cambridge, or at least been involved in litigation many times about sexual harassment, that sort of thing. The latest case involves a cop in Cambridge who most people here have heard of, even though they didn't know it. Sergeant Crowley, who was the man who stopped Henry Louis Gates Jr. at his door and then ended up being part of the beer summit with Obama and Biden.
Accusing him of breaking into his own house.
Exactly.
Basically.
And what is this $1.4 million sort of secret settlement deal?
Yeah, this is a hostile environment, sexual harassment. Number of police officers and personnel at the Cambridge Police Department have filed suits against Crowley. And this is one of those stories of if no one asks, no one finds out. So this harassment suits are going through. They're being investigated. No one appears to know about it except for the people who filed it and the people who are investigating it. And then it comes before the Cambridge City Council $1.4 million payout, and they'd like to know what it is.
Yeah.
What is this? And they go, oh, by the way, this officer, the sergeant rather, has been under investigation. These are the settlements that we're paying for the people who allegedly he sexually harassed or caused a hostile work environment for. So at this point, I will remind everyone that Massachusetts is the absolute worst state in the union for transparency when it comes to all sorts of issues, and we don't seem to care about that because we're Massachusetts, I guess. But, for the people of Cambridge and for Massachusetts, at what point should we know as citizens, as taxpayers, when someone is in such shape at their job that we're paying millions of our tax dollars for settlements or for investigations or for defenses? If this were me, if I had been under this at my job, I would have been fired like in a week and a half before the settlement even got to that point.
We should say, by the way, Crowley, with one exception, one text, I believe it was, denies that the other alleged examples of sexual harassment actually happened. I don't want to be unfair because I was a city councilor who often had no idea what I was doing. I must be honest. It was the first and only term, and I was lost at times. But it seems to me in the story that there was a 6-2 vote in favor of the settlement without the 8 people who voted knowing exactly. How can you do that? How can you vote on something that is on an issue as serious as sexual harassment?
We should point out that this is a nationwide problem. Cops do bad things, whether it's sexual harassment. I mean, we always have to say most of them are good cops.
Well, also lawmakers do too.
But yes.
I mean, all state employees,
up
the
the
non-disclosures. It's not just this is I know this is a police officer, and that adds an extra level of concern to it. And to your point, Jimmy, he denies this, and there's settlements.
Not all of it. He
not
denies.
All of it. But so there was a settlement, and oftentimes people who are victims of this want settlements. They don't want it to move forward. So saying all that to set the table, but these settlements between towns and cities and states,
it's taxpayers
with our money without us knowing,
and millions.
You have who knows why the city councilors didn't ask, why are we paying this money? Maybe they're just used to paying this.
Well, let me just say, can I say one more thing about this argument that the reason they had to keep it under wraps was to protect the identity of the accusers.
It's unimportant.
Suspicious.
I have to say, no, it's not unimportant. Protecting, if you want your identity protected, that is important.
Yes.
I refuse to accept that you can't cleanse something with redactions
I agree.
that make clear what is alleged without identifying the people making the allegations. This is total BS.
And the problem with this is, obviously, is that just like in the Catholic Church, where they were historically making non-disclosure agreements and giving people thousands of dollars and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars, you don't know who the perpetrators are. I mean, that's the other thing that's a big deal. When you hide this stuff, and that, as you point out, it goes on in the legislature, it goes on with the cops, it goes on all over the place.
Diana DiZoglio's claim to fame is challenging these NDAs.
Yes, who said she only accepted an NDA because they either told her, and she was broke at the time, absolutely broke, raised by a single mother, had financial difficulties. The only reason she wasn't going to be able to get her severance pay,
unless
she wouldn't be able to pay the rent.
Can I say one more thing about this so that people understand? I think we're all on the same page, the three of us. The importance of this beyond transparency without outing survivors who don't want to be outed, which we all agree is an important element, is if what is true, and at least one of these texts he acknowledges is true, this cop continues to be a cop, and a woman might call and have him respond to a call. Well, don't you think that woman is entitled to know what other women in the police force have accused him of doing?
Yes.
I would say the answer is yes.
Yes, and again, I don't understand how some public employees get to keep jobs and get promoted when if I did any one of these things, I would be fired. I mean, you would be too. I mean, it's Marjorie's making
No, don't. Let's not. Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Thank you, Marjorie. Okay, so you are, in addition to going to the DNC next week, and I think you're calling us one day, which we're very excited about.
Yes,
and
I'll be charging you double.
Were you there on Friday for the
Yes,
hearing?
I was.
This is the hearing where the defense is saying the second-degree murder and the leaving the scene of a crime should be dismissed because based upon information that they and the prosecution has gotten after the fact, the jury allegedly had informally voted 12-0 to acquit. I know it's really dangerous to try to read into how a judge or justices take an argument. Do it.
So Marty, who's a lawyer? Marty.
Weinberg.
Weinberg.
One of the great lawyers in Massachusetts.
I mean,
he's now representing Reed.
He's representing Reed, I think, in this particular aspect of the case. I mean, if you guys, because the court supplies such terrible audio, you don't get it. But if you want to see a great lawyer in action making a very conversational argument in a respectful way for all the parties involved, he was amazing. And Judge Beverly Cannoni was also clearly enjoying the argument. I mean, she was smiling, she was nodding. The difficulty here, from what experts and people who know more than I do, is that it's actually the motion to dismiss the first and third charges based on this informal vote. There was no verdict delivered, no official verdict delivered on either of those counts. It was a mistrial. In public, mistrial. Is that you're basically asking the judge to make law. There is no law in the books that says you can do this. You can ask a jury how they deliberated if later you found out someone was a racist or a sexist or homophobic, and that might have impacted how they deliberated. Or like in the Tsarnaev case, if someone had Facebook posts, one of the jurors, and they didn't disclose it, then you can do that.
During
but there's no other.
yeah.
There's no other avenue for you to call a jury back, and ask them. You might be able to poll them and say, "How did you vote?" But can you really say that was exactly that snapshot of where you were 4 weeks ago, or 5 weeks ago, or 6 months ago is going to hold? So. People say what will happen is that Cannoni will dismiss, will deny the motion because she doesn't have the legal standing to do it. And of course, they will appeal. And they expect that it may actually go to the Supreme Judicial Court of the state of Massachusetts. As Marty argued, if you can ask juries to come back for racism and ask them to come back for outside influence, would you not want to call them back if they were going to acquit a citizen? Why would you want to try her again? So I don't think it's going to get acquitted, but I think this is going to, or get accepted. I think it's going to go on for a long time.
I'm sure I've asked this question because I know I've asked you're not a lawyer, but you were there every day. Every lawyer who's been on the show, I've asked this question.
I've taken 2 community college courses.
Well, that's fabulous there, Sue. In any case, so I don't remember what you answered when I asked you the first time. Does anyone know why the judge in this or any other case, when there's more than one charge, doesn't say to the jury, I know you can't reach a verdict on the second. What is the?
The third was leaving the scene.
Okay, no, the second one.
The second is manslaughter.
Okay, so I know you can't reach a verdict on that. Why would a judge? No, I'm not criticizing her. I just don't know what the rules are. Why would they not say, "Have you reached a verdict on the other charges"?
One is that she's not required to.
Well, I understand that.
Right,
Why wouldn't they anyway?
So here's my theory, and this is just completely my theory.
Well, you took 2 law courses.
I did take, and I was in the courtroom. The
Attorney
whole time.
O'Connell, please share your theory.
The jurors, the foreman of the jury, the notes that they wrote about their deliberations were so eloquent, so articulate, and used really particular legal language into what they were experiencing. That I think to some degree the judge may have thought they were, and I don't want to say smarter, but more informed about the process than they actually were. So there was sort of like, oh my God, this is like a professional jury. Look at these notes. This is amazing. When in the end, it appears that they were waiting to be polled and didn't offer it. So I think it was sort of a miscommunication that happened. But again, to our kind of theme, we could change the state law to make sure that every single jury is polled when there are multiple counts.
Okay.
And this wouldn't have happened.
One other question on this. Is there an argument against having a requirement that a judge asks a jury if there are multiple counts in any criminal case, have you reached a unanimous verdict on anything?
Well, I think that if you are the defense or the prosecution and you don't want to know because it's not in your favor, I mean, also the prosecution and defense could have asked.
Of course,
but
right.
they didn't because they did. You don't want to.
No, but I'm asking: is there any downside from the perspective of justice to require a judge to ask that question?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, there's not, Jim.
What do you
Marjorie
mean? You took some courses too?
Attorney Egan over here said there is no downside, and I thought it was unusual. But
it was just odd,
But that's just me. Okay, let's get to this Red Sox player, this Jaron Duran, apologizing for yelling a homophobic slur. It seems like every couple of years we have another. Last year we had one. Sometimes they're racist things, sometimes they're homophobic things. Is this the Red Sox, or are they unusual?
Listen,
or is
there's
this
a couple
Major
of things.
League Baseball? Or?
Ruby and I were at my daughter and I were at the Red Sox-Yankees game on a Saturday a couple of weekends ago, and the one we lost just barely, and it was really exciting, and they're doing the Yankees S, and then the Yankees fans were standing up going, Red Sox S.
Stupid,
I hate it too, but they're all having a good time, and they're all doing it, and it's, I forget where we were, but we were almost going to win, and it looked like we were going to do it, and then the Yankees started, and then these 2 African-American young men stand up, and we're in the grandstand right in front of us, and they start yelling, Red Sox S, Red Sox S.
Oh, no.
And the guy next to me, who I didn't know, we both held our breath.
I know exactly what you mean.
And the guy behind me yells, Yankees S. And we went, victory! They weren't racist. They didn't. These kids were able to express their hate of the Red Sox, and there was no problem. So there's progress on that front. But on this front, listen, how old is this guy? How
Young
old is Jaron?
20s.
They still say the F word when playing sports all through middle school, high school. I have been shocked by the response from people. We went out and did a story on this. We talked to people on the street who think it's no big deal to call someone the F word. And I think that, I don't think this guy is necessarily homophobic or isn't supportive, but it's a slur that gets used a lot, especially for young men and boys who are playing sports. And we just need to take the moment to say, it's a bad word. Don't say it.
2 things. One,
and you're not talking about the F word that refers to a homosexual.
Correct.
Right. 2 things. One,
the other F word's fine.
He apologized twice.
Just
for the record, so people know he apologized in front of reporters yesterday, and I think in a statement the night before. The thing I don't understand, I don't want to dwell on this too much. The fact, and I think there are a lot of real grown-ups in the front. Sam Kennedy, somebody I really admire, president of the Red Sox.
Yes.
I think a pretty honest character and a person who cares deeply about inclusion and that sort of thing. The fact that this young guy went out to make his apology in a T-shirt that said F them, not the anti-gay F them, but the other F.
Yeah.
And and by the way, he apparently wears that almost all the time. He's had mental health issues. Yeah. He's basically saying, I'm getting my life together, F all these people. Yeah. The fact that they let him go out and let a person like me, who has never seen him speak before, and I watch a video, the first thing I see is how sincere can an apology be when he's wearing a T-shirt that says I mean, it's just really poor. And by the way, Kennedy did criticize him for Kennedy, the president of the Red Sox. Sam did criticize Duran for wearing that T-shirt.
Oh, wait a minute. Which T-shirt was this, please?
The apologizer, the player,
the other
when he
F
does
word.
his apology, the other F word is more regularly used.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to say I'm sorry when you're wearing a shirt that says F.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it kind of loses a little something.
So can we only have a minute left. Can we...
generally speaking, just in general, why would you wear a T-shirt that says
Well, he's got a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
No, I actually understand that considering he's had
a
lot of struggles. This was not the right time for this, and he should have shown more better judgment, and so should his colleagues, his bosses, etc.
Well, sometimes I think these guys are so young. They need someone to take them aside and say, knock it off.
No, but after you've done something like this, you'd think twice and
exactly.
whatever. Okay, we only have a minute left, but in light of the fact that we are trashing correctly this legislature every day for leaving for 5 months, even though they may do a few things, they left so much undone. Briefly tell us, I think the signing was yesterday on this parenting thing. This is a really good and important thing. What happened?
So basically, gay and lesbian parents who have a child don't have to go, one of them doesn't have to go and adopt the child again. So here's the idea. You're a man, you're a woman. The woman goes into the hospital, gives birth to a baby. The baby is there. She, delivers it, and they go to the man she's with, her husband, and they say, "You're the father," and he signs the birth certificate, and that's it. There's no DNA testing. There's no, anything. You just sign the document because you entered as a couple saying, "This is our child," and that's what happens. Except if you're a lesbian, you're not legally that child's parent. Even though you may be married, you may have conceived of this child together, you may have planned on this, unless you go and adopt your own child later. So
which is expensive.
It's
which is
very
insane,
expensive
too.
and insane. And it doesn't. And here's the fair part. It doesn't happen to straight couples, right? You don't really know if your husband's the father of your child.
You really don't know.
You really don't.
I mean, the
But he
gas
signs it,
man,
right?
the UPS guy.
It looks like the mailman,
That's
right? But you sign it right there, and nobody says you need a DNA test or you have to go back and adopt your child. So this evens the playing field. It does help with other issues, other straight couples as well. But now, if you are two men or two women and you go into a hospital and the baby is born, you're both the parents.
Well, you know what the
legally.
thing is that seems to be such a classic case. If before you've officially adopted the kid and the baby runs a fever or something happens and bio mom is at work or can't be reached, and the other mother is in a difficult situation.
Yeah, you have
at the hospital.
In our family, we didn't have the Ruby biologically, but my partner had to carry around a legal document that she had legal authority to pick the child up. If the child went to the hospital, you had to actually show proof that you were legally authorized to do this.
And God
that's
forbid
crazy.
you forget it, you run out of the house without it.
No, exactly, or something happens unexpected.
Now that we're out of time, can I just praise Marjorie? I don't praise her enough. The fact that you voluntarily chose to leave King Charles and Harry out of this discussion was really grown up on your part, by the way.
Yeah,
really grown up.
Okay, there were so many other people to talk about.
Exactly.
And I'm glad I did.
Sue O'Connell, we'll be watching you at the Democratic National Convention.
I'll be
Good luck.
phoning in or
do your
doing
usual
it.
great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with our media maven, Sue O'Connell. We'd love to talk to Sue O'Connell. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows and South End News, co-host of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30, and she's going to be reporting live from the Democratic National Convention next week. Thanks, Sue.
See you, Sue.
Up next, President and CEO of the Trustees of Reservation, Katie Theoharides, is next. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming
You were
online
fabulous.
at youtube.com/GBH News.
What if you could have a direct say in where your tax dollars go? Like maybe a program paying people to help seniors clear snow from their property?
I would love to see a budget for that for seniors.
That's just one of the ideas floated by residents at a recent meeting as a process known as participatory budgeting comes to Boston.
When we see this implemented in different places across the world, we tend to see increases in trust of government, increases in civic participation.
I'm Soraya Wintersmith. You can find that story at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And South Coast Artists, presenting their 21st annual Open Studio Tour August 17th and 18th in Tiverton and Little Compton, Rhode Island, and Dartmouth and Westport, Massachusetts. You can download the tour brochure at southcoastartists.org. and Boston Children's Museum, presenting the Summer of Curiosity, where you can play, create, and wonder about the world around you. From Winnie the Pooh to the Outdoor Curiosity Kitchen. Learn more at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In about 20 minutes, we're going to be joined by two of the lead players in The Queen of Versailles, playing down the street, the legendary F. Murray Abraham and the soon-to-be legendary Greg Hildreth, born in West Roxbury. We'll talk to them soon. But first, we're joined by the woman whose name we will mispronounce maybe 20 times in the next 10 minutes, Katie Theoharides. Whatever.
Yeah.
Let's do that again. We're joined now by Katie Theoharides. How is that?
Very good. Thank
How
you.
offended are you every time you leave here?
I'm not.
Yes, you are. Okay.
No, I'm not.
She is president and CEO of the Trustees of Reservations, the oldest land conservation nonprofit in the world. Katie, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me again.
Our pleasure.
You're a very good sport, because we have butchered it many times.
We
but
have.
I think we're finally.
We will again.
You're better than the majority of the population.
That's not
thank
saying
you.
much,
That's
my
very
friend,
good.
but thank you.
So it is, what is it today, August 13th?
It is August 13th.
So we only have a few weeks left in the summer. Jim wants to know what he can do between now and Labor Day. Beaches,
Not just me.
Beaches and trail-wise. I mean, what would be worth squeezing in if we haven't done it already?
Yeah, well, the good news is the most beautiful part of the summer, fall is ahead of us. And I don't know about you both, but I actually start thinking about getting back outside to trails as the cool air comes down, going for a run, going for a hike in the woods. We have 250 public programs open between now and August 30th. That's everything from yoga at some of our places like De Cordova Sculpture Park
I'll
out
be
in
doing
Lincoln.
that.
That's so
go
neat.
ahead.
To summer concert series out at places like Fruitlands in Harvard, Massachusetts, evening hours at Namkeg out in Stockbridge in the Berkshires, and of course Crane Beach is still open and beautiful all year.
Is this all on your website, by the way?
It is all on our website.
Which is what?
thetrustees.org. You got to get the in there, or it doesn't work.
That's right.
You know, by the way, I want to compliment you. Last time you were here a couple of months ago, you described to us this new parking system, because frankly, parking at these beaches was a disaster before this. Could you, and I used it to go to Crane Beach a few weeks ago. It was great. Could you explain to people how this thing works?
So you have to buy a ticket, a time ticket entry to go to the beach. And if you have a membership to the trustees, you get various levels of discounts, a membership over a certain level, and you have free access to all of our properties and to Crane Beach. And what the ticket does is it ensures you have a parking spot when you arrive and that there's not a line out the gate. Putting a price on those tickets also means that people come for their reservation. We used to have a permitting system, and what we found was that people who had bought the permit for the year would make lots of reservations and then not show up.
Yeah.
And so this year what we found is we had a lot more equitable access to the beach, with people able to make their reservation and then come.
Can you be honest? I know you will be.
Yeah.
Has this worked as smoothly as it worked for me, or are there glitches that...
It's working well this year. There are, as with any kind of change, some people who prefer who miss the old system. But what we've been able to see is, for example, I was there Sunday actually, which was a beautiful afternoon. And
Do you have to buy a ticket to get in?
I don't have to buy a ticket.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's right. It's one of the
Although
perks.
I will say, I'm a Founder Circle member, so I give annually as part of the role.
Okay, that's fine.
But what we find is that on a beautiful day like Sunday, people were able to come for the morning, then that segment left, and another group came for the afternoon, and so people really were able to get to the beach and enjoy what was a spectacular.
It's great. It's really great.
We asked you about this before, but the greenheads, they're done now?
They're done, and I will say they're a very limited window. So about 2 weeks at most beaches in Massachusetts in July, and this year it was a very short season. We manage at Crane 4 greenheads with both traps and keeping the ecosystem healthy. But they were out in July, and now it is just absolutely fabulous at the beach.
So I was down the Cape over the weekend, and you know, a lot of people are very upset about wind farms. I think I'm very excited about wind farms, but not everybody is. And the fact
like
that
who, Marjorie?
People that I know.
Like who?
People that I know. I'm not going to reveal any names. But they were all chattering about this whole thing with the blade of the wind farm breaking apart and washing up and closing the beaches.
Vineyard Wind. And we had the
Wind.
head guy from Vineyard Wind with Joe Cartatone here a few weeks ago.
So with this fragile of people's attitudes. This hurts things.
You know, I think every industry that's gotten started off has some bumps along the road, and this is a bump for the industry, certainly. I think, if anything, it will make protections and regulations around putting in offshore wind even more stringent than they already are. They're some of the most stringent regulations to protect the ocean in the world, to ensure that we can produce clean energy that will ultimately keep the ocean and the ecosystem the ocean produces and all of the fish in it and other wildlife healthy, because the Gulf of Maine is the most rapidly warming body of water in the world. So you have to balance these carbon-free solutions with strong protections. And I think ultimately, while this is a bump in the road, it will make the industry safer overall.
Are any of your beaches affected? What are they called? Shards or whatever they are? Are any of them affected?
We have beaches both on the Vineyard, Nantucket, and both of them had some. People saw debris from the shoreline.
Did you have to close them or no?
We didn't have to close them, and I will say the team came right out and looked for debris. I don't think there was any removed from our beaches, but they kept a very close eye on it and were in good touch with us throughout.
But bottom line, this is not going to impact their continued building and getting it up and running out there by Martha's Vineyard.
I don't know what it does in terms of their timeline for getting new blades onto the turbines, but I think it will continue. And something that heartens me is it's not an oil spill in the ocean. You know, it's a blade that came down, and there is some debris, but it's not fossil fuel.
And haven't they put construction on temporary hold while they're investigating this? Am I right about this or no?
I think so, although I'm not following it as closely.
You know, I should know the answer to this, and you're the wrong person to ask, so I'll ask you anyway. When you were secretary of whatever, what were you secretary of?
Energy and Environmental Affairs.
For Charlie Baker. Yeah. Where was Baker? Where were you on the whole wind deal, the Baker administration? So
Baker passed legislation in 2016 that for the first time authorized the state to buy offshore wind. So he started, that legislation in partnership with the legislature passed, I think, at 2:00 in the morning, the night before the end of session. That authorized it, and we were the ones who selected the offshore wind project with the utilities.
You did?
Yes.
So speaking of the legislature for a second.
We have some news there.
What's that?
Our staff says Vineyard Wind announced today the federal government has given permission to resume some construction on the 62 turbine wind farm. So it is going ahead.
So as you know, your former boss, Charlie Baker, was on our show. The governor was on our show every month.
Yes.
And every time we asked the governor for 8 years that he was with us, well, actually he was with us for like 12 years, but only 8 years as governor. When we asked him about the 5-month vacation for the legislature, he defended them taking off for 5 months. They're not going to do lame duck things and whatever. When you were in private discussions with Charlie Baker, what did he really say about the legislature going on vacation for 5 months?
I don't think I ever heard him say anything about it.
That's not true, right?
That is true.
How'd you feel about it as a secretary?
They do a lot of work in their districts during the vacation.
Yeah.
But
which of them represent Hawaii? I'm not sure which one that is. Who is that? Exactly.
I don't know. I will say it is very challenging, and I am sympathetic to all the folks who scrambled at the end of session. It's very challenging to get so much done the last week of July.
Well, they have a solution for that. Don't do it, which is what they did. And now they're on a 5-month vacation.
It's the leadership, really,
Correct.
That leads the people to have to sign things and vote for things they haven't even had a chance to read.
So who are we talking to, Marjorie? Let's see if you can pronounce her name.
Katie. Hold on.
Theo Herades.
Theo Herades. I wrote it down, but no, of course I can't.
Head of the Trustees of Reservation.
Yeah, Theo Herades. She's the head of the Trustees of Reservation. But one last thing about the climate change. We're talking about wind farms. People are catching on to this. When you have all these stories in the paper about kettle ponds being shut down on Cape Cod and the beaches all shrinking, it's real to people now for the most part. In a way, I think it wasn't 10 years ago.
I think the more we're seeing the localized impacts in communities, and we've been seeing those across Massachusetts for many years now. What I found when I was secretary and what I'm finding now going out in communities is when people can see the impacts, they do really appreciate that climate
How much
change.
of a challenge is it for you? I mean, you've had tons of erosion issues in the Chappaquiddick.
Yes.
I know a project in East Boston is being changed. Tell us what you're confronting and how you're dealing with it.
So after the state and the feds, we're the largest coastal landowner in the state. And we have over 120 miles of coastal beaches and wetlands and dunes. And we see the erosion every year. We have a great refuge reservation out on Martha's Vineyard called Long Point. It has a kettle pond behind a coastal beach, and if you're a family with children, they can swim in the nicely protected kettle pond, and then you can go walk out on what is a pretty wild beach. This winter, the ocean came crashing through that beach into the kettle pond, and as it went back out finally, it left decaying marine sea creatures in the kettle pond, which then caused high bacteria counts over the summer combined with the high temperatures. So we're seeing this at our properties, and we know there will be a large price tag for building a more resilient coast, and we want to be part of the solution, but it's going to take all of us working together.
What is the solution that you're part of, for example, on ocean beaches or any beaches?
By the way, just wanted to say, kettle ponds are usually freshwater, right?
They're brackish usually.
Oh, they're brackish.
Sometimes they're more fresh.
So they wouldn't necessarily be devastated by the salt water, but I think the
inundation like that is
devastating.
It's devastating. Right. Changes a lot.
So what are you doing on the protection front?
So we're doing a lot of things right now on Nantucket. We're looking at 3 different areas of vulnerability to sea level rise and the solutions that we could put in place, building up the dunes, doing things like oyster reef restoration to prevent inundation coming through and breaching that beach. With sea level rise and storm surge, we're looking at similar solutions out on the vineyard. And then up on near Crane Beach, behind the beach in the Great Marsh, which is an area of critical environmental concern protected federally, we're restoring the hydrology of the marsh so it can build back sediment to keep pace with rising sea levels.
So is this preventing the inevitable, or is this...
It's slowing. I think it's slowing. Slowing the inevitable.
The oysters down in Hyannis, they were not able to be eaten. Remember, that was
because of the pollutants.
Because of the pollutants, yeah. So what's happening in East Boston?
So we have been working for a number of years to increase access to green space, to increase programming. We've reached 11,000 residents of East Boston through community programming and engagement. And we have community gardens, as we have across the city. We have some community gardens in East Boston. We had a vision to create a waterfront park that would build resiliency to the city, allow community members access down to the water, which is hard to find in East Boston, and create much needed green space for the community. And as we've worked on that project over the last 7 years, a lot has changed. The first thing that we really looked at more recently was how does sea level rise affect this park? And what we found is that as the park shrunk and sea level rise projections continued to get worse, by 2050 the entire park will be underwater. Wow. And this is a park we plan to spend tens of millions of dollars on. And the other thing we found is that the climate resiliency benefits for the city of East Boston itself were negligible. It wasn't going to do anything to prevent the water coming into the city, which was the original plan. But as the design took shape, we found it really wasn't going to help the city in a meaningful way. And so what we're looking for now is where can we do projects, probably in partnership with the city and other partners, that provide access to green space in an environmental justice community that needs that access desperately, and then also have the benefit of preventing floodwaters from coming into the city as seas rise and rainstorms become more intense.
Did you see David Abel's film, The Inundation District?
I haven't seen it yet. The night I was supposed to go, there was a protest at it, I think. But
about what?
About climate change.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
David Abel, who's a former Globe reporter, did a film called The Inundation District, which is a take on the term that is used to describe the Seaport Innovation District, and about the rising seas and what it's going to mean for this new Upper East Side sort of part of Boston.
Now, I have to squeeze in the dreaded local angle here.
What is it?
In my hometown of Fall River.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have opened a new hiking trail accessible to people. Tell us about this.
Yes, the Copacut Woods Discovery Trail, which is the southern entrance to the Mass Bioreserve A lot of people don't know about the bioreserve.
All I know is Watuppa Pond. That's what I know.
It's collectively 13,000 acres of really unfragmented natural areas down, stretching from Fall River through Dartmouth and up. And there's at least 5 or 6 different landowners, including the state, including the Dartmouth Natural Resource Council and the trustees. And it's in a part of the state where there's a lot of more urban populations that can get out to this amazing open space. And so what we've done is create sort of an entrance-level outdoor experience. It's a path that is accessible to wheelchairs and strollers. And along the way, there are little stops for discovery play, nature play for kids. And it's a short path, but if you're new to getting outside, this is sort of a start. And there's many other trails you can take from that same trailhead. So if you do that trail and you feel like you're up for more, there's other opportunities as
Before
well.
you go, Katie, speaking of new to getting outside, if I were to go outside, I would be new to getting outside. I'm not exactly an outdoors kind of guy. I know it's shocking to hear. But you talked about what programs the trustees have through August 30th. I lived in Provincetown for a year when I took a year off from law school many, many years ago. The most beautiful time of year on the dunes and places like that was when all the tourists had gone home. The weather started to change. It was unimaginably beautiful. What do you guys do come Labor Day, post-Labor Day?
So our beaches across the state are still open. Crane Beach, I love swimming at Crane in September, October. The water has finally warmed. I don't know, if you go on the North Shore in June, your feet, your feet get numb. So the water's beautiful. Starting in October, you can bring your dog to the beach.
Oh, that's great.
And to your point, they're a lot less crowded. And at places like Crane, we have 7 miles of hiking in the dunes, which is much easier to do in the cool weather.
Fabulous. Before you go, you're a great provider of swag, I should say. You're in the top 5 of our guests. What'd you bring today?
Canvas totes today.
Oh,
This is
love
very
canvas
exciting.
totes.
I love
From
yes.
LL Bean with some trustees labeling, but this is to go to the beach.
Love that.
So get the beach
I
before
can do the
Labor
beach.
Day.
The beach I can do.
Okay. I will say our farms, we are approaching harvest season. So if you go to Crane on the North Shore, Appleton Farms is right down the street. They have a CSA, lovely produce, and a farm store with
cider
granola.
Donuts, yes or no?
I don't know, but some weekends maybe.
Okay,
we have a great baker there, a sourdough baker, makes the most amazing bread and pastries.
Fabulous, we'll do it. Katie, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much for your work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for joining us, Katie. I'm going to try this again. We've been speaking with Katie Theoharides.
That's right, I think.
President and CEO of the Trustees of Reservations. Thank you so much
Great to see you,
for
Katie.
being here, Katie. Up next, we are so excited about this. Oscar winner F. Murray Abraham and local guy, West Roxbury guy, Greg Hilfreth. Both of them starring in The Queen of Versailles, this fantastic musical that's at the Colonial right now. They are next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Pregnant people in states with abortion restrictions and bans are getting abortion pills through the mail from out-of-state providers.
This is a legitimate service. These are legitimate docs. These are real pills.
This is partly why the number of abortions nationwide has continued to grow. I'm Mary Louise Kelly. More on the shield laws that make it possible on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, providing resources and tools to help you navigate the college planning process, including customized plans of savings, loans, and guidance. More information at mefa.org. And the Museum of Science with Survival of the Slowest, a new live animal exhibit that demonstrates evolution down the path less traveled. MOS.org.
I'm Zoe Matthews, senior producer for Boston Public Radio, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. Here with us now, two actors who star in The Queen of Versailles, right down the street. I guess I'd call it a true-ish story about one woman and man's go at building a scale replica of the Palace of Versailles just outside Orlando, Florida. If you've been unconscious for the past few weeks, the show is in the middle of its pre-Broadway run over at Emerson's Colonial Theater. Oscar winner and White Lotus star, to mention, there are dozens others. F. Murray Abraham plays David Siegel, the timeshare king of Orlando, and husband to Kristen Chenoweth's Jackie Siegel. Murray, it's great to have you here. We're honored you'd be with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Also with us, the local boy, West Roxbury's own Greg Hildreth. He's played numerous roles on Broadway. He plays F. Murray Abraham's loyal business associate, Gary. It's great to meet you too, Greg. It's great to have you here. Their show runs through August 25th. For information and get tickets, go to Emerson Colonial Theater with an RE.com. Welcome to you both.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much for coming here. Well, let's start with you, Murray. Everybody knows you. You've been in everything Jim mentioned, White Lotus, Angels in America, Amadeus, Serpico, Scarface, all these great films and great Broadway productions. So why did you choose to do this one as well?
Oh, it's a great piece of work, for one thing. But also, I don't know if you know her, but Kristen Chenoweth is the best entertainer in America today. She is so good. I'm not exaggerating.
No.
She is so, wonderful to work with. But she is an extraordinary performer. If you haven't ever seen, you've seen her.
Oh, yes.
Am I exaggerating?
We both
No,
saw
she commands the stage.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. She's fabulous. So you chose it because of Kristen, or?
Well, Kristen, but also I happen to know Stephen Schwartz, but I just wanted to do a musical so much.
Yeah.
And I get to sing and dance in this.
You're a timeshare superstar in this as well as singing and dancing. Did you have a timeshare that maybe inspired
No,
you?
I've never had a timeshare.
Oh, okay.
Just
Just
it's an extraordinary story. If you haven't seen it, even the thing upon which this is based.
The documentary.
Yes, the documentary.
You got to see it. Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
By the way, speaking of singing, you're no Kristen Chenoweth, but you can sing. You really, should I have been shocked or no?
Thank you.
Okay, so Greg, you're the local kid. I assume you went to this theater when you were a little kid?
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely saw lots of touring shows and shows Emerson College growing up.
So what's it like you're a BU kid too, right?
That's right, yeah.
What's it like not to be in the seat watching performers, but being on the stage looking out at the audience? It's got to be huge.
It's a completely surreal experience. Yeah. Theater, saved my life as a kid. And
what do you mean by that?
Just having a creative outlet, an outlet to express myself or to, escape. It saved my life. So
what's it working with him like? By the way, West Roxbury.
It was a JP Community Theater that you had one of your first starring roles, correct?
That's right. It was Neighborhood Children's Theater run by a woman named Michelle McCourt, who I think still runs it, and probably helped a lot of kids get into the arts.
What's it like working with him and Chenoweth?
An absolute nightmare with Murray. And I really am enjoying my time with Kristen, I'll say that. No, I have been such a long-time fan of Murray, and it's only deepened. I would say you probably have learned a lot from working with me as well.
Yes.
Yeah, but didn't I read, Murray, you had a teacher, you were a little bit older, but there was a teacher that inspired you.
I'm a lot older.
Yeah, but when you were not like 5 years old when you had this experience.
No, it was in high school. She saved my life. Same as he was saying.
Tell us.
And I got my start in New York in children's musical theater.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell, I realized, I'm assuming, which I shouldn't, that people know more of the story. It is true-ish. It's based off this documentary about this woman who comes from meager means. She ends up marrying you, the timeshare king of
a billionaire.
Orlando,
Billionaire.
and they decide to build the most expensive house in America, modeled on Versailles.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the story, if you will?
Well, it's that. It's someone who has wanted, who grew up with big, big dreams, like so many of us do. But in her case, she was able to, with his help, bring all of her dreams to make them all come true. But with that kind of money, it's like when you come into a lot of money, suddenly you start spending it on everything. Aren't we all that way? We just say, oh, well, I've got the money, I'll take this and this, even stuff you don't think you need. And that's what she did. And then, of course, there was the crash, and they got broke. They went broke. And then they got it back again. So I think it's a story that every American can absolutely understand.
It's a great story.
Because you're tempted by that thing. You say, well, I've always wanted this, I'll take it. I'll take 2 of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was the sort of looking at the is that all there is? The greed part of this, the daughter that is disappointed.
Totally,
Rick,
yes.
talk about that.
I mean, it's the same. It's when the American dream goes too far. It's the perils of the American dream and the things that are left in its wake when that is the only. When consuming is the only thing you think about. Or
By the way,
you
you have a Nathan Lane sort of thing going in this play. Has anyone said that to you?
Once or twice.
Yeah. In other words, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Really,
I'll take it.
I mean, that's huge.
That's high praise.
Do you see that in him, or is it only me?
I've worked with Nathan, and I've worked with him, and he's just as funny as Nathan is.
Well, there you go.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
I have to pull him back sometimes.
You mentioned Stephen Schwartz in passing, and I'm worried that some people don't know who Stephen Schwartz is.
Oh, he wrote Wicked. He wrote
with
Pippin,
Kristen Chenoweth.
Yes. He's just a great American writer.
How do you feel that? You sing a beautiful, beautiful song.
Just
keep talking, man.
No, you do. I mean, you really do. How's that feel?
It's a beautiful love song.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's all you're going to say
It's
about
nothing
it?
like, no, all I can tell you is I'm grateful. I mean, I really am.
Well, you sang really well. I remember when Bradley Cooper, remember he was doing the Lady Gaga thing years ago about the terrible story about the guy that was the rock star and alcoholic, A Star is Born thing. I mean, you pulled it off as well. I mean, a guy that wasn't known for singing gets up there and sings on the stage.
I'm so glad I came here to
Well,
sing.
no, it's true. It's true because it's not, I can't even imagine it. I want to know something else, too. There was this little white dog that was held by Kristen Chenoweth a lot through the play, and I often wondered, what does the dog do when the dog is off stage? I mean, is it the dog running around backstage?
That's what dogs do.
Is it in a little crate, or what do they do with the dog?
Complains. Why am I not on stage more? Right. And, by the way, Kristen gets this enormous applause when she comes out for her final curtain call. And then the dog gets more.
The dog is handed to her at the end.
It was the cutest little thing I've ever seen. And the other thing I thought was really extraordinary.
You know, Jackie Siegel had a dog. I mean, if
yes,
you see
it was the
More
thing.
than one.
Famous. I mean, it's based on this true story. It follows it fairly closely. The other thing I thought was amazing, and I'm not an expert on the theater, but the set. At the beginning, it looks like Versailles of old, with the paintings on the wall and the people in costume, and then that huge staircase toward the end that looked, I mean, it must have been like 25 stairs. I mean, talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, the design of the show is unlike anything I think I've ever seen on stage.
Never been on stage.
Right? like the most polished version of the house, obviously, but then also like the house in different phases. The scaffolding, there's a giant rolling stair unit that goes around, and we're using all of those elements to kind of tell this story. Dane Laffrey is a genius designer who designed the show.
What you do is you get to see the set changing before your eyes.
Which I love.
It's
a lot
thrilling.
of movement.
Yeah.
There is a lot of movement. I'm going to ask you a stupid question, and I'm hoping, since I've been nice to you, you're not going to say it's a stupid question. He is huge. Kristen Chenoweth is. We have somebody huge on the show. I'm not a nervous kind of guy, but I know one of you, in an article I read about you, was talking about Anthony Bourdain. When we had him on, I was so nervous I almost couldn't speak, and he was spectacular. Are you? I mean, I'm sure it goes away. Are you anxious when you know you're going to act? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to him here. Are you anxious when you know you're going to be on a stage performing with the likes of him and Kristen Chenoweth?
I mean, absolutely. But the thing, more than anxiety, it gives me something to aim for. I mean, I've looked up to both of them for as long as I can remember. So to have them, these models live in the room does more than make me anxious.
Is he nice or is he an a-hole in private? What's he like? A-hole? Okay.
We should probably wrap this up. Let's
That's what the F stands
for.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I get to ask a question I've always wondered about.
Yes.
Because years ago when I saw Amadeus, and you played Salieri, who was a very talented composer, but he wasn't this super genius like Mozart was. And I thought that play and the whole story and the movie was such a wonderful thing to learn that many of us may have some talent, or maybe we've got even big talent. But then there's the, and you must have, obviously that's occurred to you, that playing that role, the difference in total, utter genius and really good. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But if you'll remember at the opening of the film, what Salieri is doing, after all he's gone through, is he's composing. He still hopes that he can achieve it.
That's right.
But I will tell you this about that kind of genius. I believe that's true of Kristen Chenoweth. I think she is right up there. I ain't kidding.
Well, she can do it all. She can sing,
Yes,
she
ma'am.
can act, she can dance, she can move the whole.
Am I right?
the whole-
Really funny.
The whole.
She's really
Every
funny.
night, 8 times a week, she's
Have you ever
wonderful.
worked with her before?
No, but I'm deeply in love with her, and her husband is a very nice man, too.
But she's on the stage for a very long time. The play-
90% of the time.
Yeah, 90% of the time, and the play is 2 hours and something, right?
Yeah, 2:45. Yeah, and I mean, even on top of her being like brilliant on stage, she's an incredible leader of the company. She's fun to be around.
We can't say enough good about her.
Totally.
It sounds like when we keep on going, you're not going to believe it, but it's all true.
No, we accept it. We're talking to F. Murray Abraham and Greg Hildreth, who is a local guy. Greg is, who was born in West Roxbury, went to BU, and all these. I assume you live in Brooklyn like everybody. Is that
You're
really,
right. You're
is that really
exactly
true?
right. Yeah.
I thought that was a guess, but everybody. Do you live in Brooklyn? Where do you live?
Manhattan.
Manhattan is close
Manhattan.
enough. Okay.
Well, you're going to be on Broadway in 2025. That's what I'm reading anyway, and I wonder how that comes about. I mean, how does it get?
I'll tell you this.
Okay, what?
As an actor, there's
Yes.
nothing like working on Broadway. It's the best. I like Boston very much, but I like New York a lot too. And I don't think there's anything better than the Boston-New York rivalry. I'm sure that Boston likes to win, but they like to beat New York even more.
That's right.
Am I right? We
Red
feel
Sox,
the same way about
Red
Boston.
Sox and the Yankees. Red Sox.
What's the future of Broadway look like? Seriously, we know how painful it was, obviously, during the pandemic.
It's blooming now.
It is blooming.
Isn't it? That's why we had to postpone this till next year, because the theaters were all full.
Is that really so? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I just wish the tickets weren't so expensive, that's all.
Well, you can do those daily. You show up
Yeah,
and try to
it's
buy
true.
them daily. Our theater critic talks about that all the time, how he goes down and just hangs out and gets these really reduced price
Or Today
tickets.
Tix is a great app.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Can we
But they're
talk
not,
about
they're not that expensive here, though. They're good here.
They are. They're reasonably priced.
Yes.
They are.
You could also do like other civilized
Also,
countries
can I
do,
tell
and
you
have the
something?
government help subsidize
yeah,
the arts to a
absolutely.
lower degree than we do. I mean,
It's an interesting
really
idea.
disgraceful because it is very expensive, I think, for regular people, and they don't get a chance.
That's right.
To go see.
The other thing, it is a beautiful theater.
Theater.
I don't know what it's like to perform
Spectacular
in,
theater.
but being in the audience, you just can't stop gawking at how beautiful the redo
Absolutely.
is. Can we talk about a current event with you? I saw you as Roy Cohn in Angels in America, 30 years, whatever long ago it was.
It's one of my favorite performances.
Okay, and we have a guy here from Frontline who's with us who did a wonderful series. It's called The Choice. I don't know if you've probably both seen it. It's 2 hours each quadrennial, is that the right word, on each of the two major candidates. And he spends, his name is Michael Kirk, spends a huge amount of time in the one he did either 4 or 8 years ago about how the most formative experience on Donald Trump's life was his being under the wing of Roy Cohn. I'm sure you knew everything about him when you played him. Do you subscribe to that notion?
Yes, I do, unfortunately, because Roy Cohn was a monster. And that was very difficult for me to play because I disliked him so much. But I got past that, and I decided to enjoy his evil, and that's when the performance blossomed. That's an interesting thing to say, but it's true. But yes, I think he was corrupt, and I think it's unfortunate that he had such a close situation with Trump.
When you say he was a monster, what do you mean?
Well, he was He was a homosexual man who went after and tried to destroy homosexuals.
Yeah.
How sick is that, you know?
And the right-hand guy.
And he died of AIDS.
Right. Yeah. And complained that Trump never came to see him and visit him in the last months of his life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Greg, we're going to talk more about him a little bit. Can we include you in this? What do you think of White Lotus?
Oh my gosh, huge fan. I think I've watched it twice.
And is that true, or are you saying that for
no,
him?
I have.
What do you
watched
think
it
of him
twice.
in White Lotus?
I think it's not very far off from who he is in real life.
Okay.
Was that as much, by the way, I know these kind of questions are so childish, but we're going to do it. Was it as much fun to do as it was to watch? I mean, that was one of the great series.
I hated to leave that show.
You did?
I hated to leave it. It was the Sicily is wonderful.
Right.
Oh, my God.
I'm part Italian, and I've done a lot of work in Italy, but Sicilians are different. And it was much, I loved it. But thank you for talking about me. But I have to tell you.
About him?
We are very serious about our comic work together. Yes. And when we get through with something, if there's a laugh, we always talk about it.
The two of you?
Yeah, you got to come up here.
Yeah.
And if you came in a little earlier, don't step on that laugh. He's a technician, just like I am. No, that's really good.
And there are some very funny moments between the two of you.
Yeah.
You notice how he
love
changed?
about Murray. He never stops working, even once the show is open. We're still.
We do.
Yeah.
Well, you had that interaction when everything goes south, and you're standing very up.
Oh, then it's his
outside your
fault.
Office. Yeah, it's his fault.
Right.
That's right. It's very nerve-wracking. But then you get it back at the end.
Yeah. Get another chance tomorrow.
That's right.
Another chance tomorrow.
That's right.
You know, do you prefer? I mean, you've done a huge amount on stage, and obviously you've done dozens, close to 100 films. I think I read. Having a live audience, to me, I mean, we love coming here as opposed to being in a little studio in Brighton. It's great to have human beings when you're doing a show.
Someone's sleeping.
Oh, no.
Oh, actually, that's the same person that was sleeping at Queen of Versailles when I saw it on Sunday. It's amazing the person's here. Is that not, I mean, that's got to be the most thrilling for both of you, starting with you, Mary.
Right.
I mean, it's huge, right?
The best.
Yeah, there's nothing like live theater.
Yeah.
And are you aware? I mean, are you thinking? Do you even know we're there when we're there, other than intellectually? You do.
Absolutely. I mean, there's something that happens in our transition from like the rehearsal room into
one's a rehearsal and the other
audience.
is a performance.
Yeah.
And it's an exchange.
But it is, yeah. There's a consciousness thing too, especially in such a big house. You kind of really have to think about and take care of the audience. Think about the person in the last row. Make sure that it's reaching them, and you know.
Are you guys going to be in the Broadway version of this?
Well, I am. I hope you are.
I hope so.
If he's busy doing something else, he'll have to take it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not till early 2025. Is that the
spring?
Spring of 2025.
But if he's got a big movie, I mean, of course he'll stay with the movie, right?
No. I'd pass just to hang out with you.
So what's your day like when you have a performance every single night? I mean, do you get up in the morning and do...
We drink and carouse.
Yeah, I heard that you like to drink and carouse. I think I read that in one of the stories about you.
But not when I'm working.
Not when you're working.
No, I'm very serious.
But how do you do it? Because it is late in the day. You can't just go home at 10:30 or wherever you're staying, 11 o'clock at night, and just relax. I wouldn't.
Well,
think.
you're also doing 2 shows on the weekends.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's intense.
And on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Wednesday as well.
Saturday,
Okay.
Yeah, we're pretty wired late at night when we, it's hard to go straight to bed.
Yeah.
And then, for me at least, I feel like my eating schedule changes. It's like breakfast at 11, dinner at 4, and then other dinner at 11:30.
Well, I could do that.
But can you relax at all? I mean, can you walk around or go to the beach or do any of these things, or are you just basically where you're staying and then going to the theater?
Oh, I've been to both of your wonderful museums here in town.
Oh, you have?
Oh, I got a membership. I love your museum.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
great.
Which one did you go to?
Both of them. The two.
Museum
there's
of Fine
3
Arts?
here, but that was
Garden
what
Museum?
a atrium that is.
Yes, that's gorgeous.
But the other one, the one with the ladies' names.
Oh, Isabel Stewart Garden
Gardner.
Museum
Wonderful.
with the interior atrium with all the gorgeous flowers.
Wonderful.
Yeah, she's a neat story.
You know, while you're here, while we're praising you and you're praising Kristen Chenoweth, who is unbelievable, the whole cast in this thing. Yeah. I mean, everybody's
The young
really
women.
good.
You
the
got the
young
playbill
women,
in front of you.
Who plays Victoria? Is that her name?
Nina White.
And the woman who plays the niece, or what are their names?
Yeah.
Nina White and Tatum.
They are just spectacular talents, and they're like 20-somethings.
One of them is 19.
She's 19.
19.
Fabulous.
Really
Yeah.
fabulous. Okay, before you go, F. Murray Abraham, I read a quote on NPR, National Public Radio, for whom we work. I'm going to drop dead on the stage. That's my fondest hope. Do you have a timetable for that or no? What is it?
123.
Yeah, that was a pretty great line. You're both spectacular in this play, as is Chenoweth and as all are your fellow players. I'm really thrilled to have you here today. Thanks so much for your time.
Very much.
The show was
Really glad to have you.
spectacular. It was a real treat to get to see it and a real treat to get to meet you both. Thank you so much for coming in. We have been speaking with F. Murray
pleasure.
Abraham
Our
and
pleasure.
Craig Hildreth from the Queen of Versailles. It is a great show in the middle of its pre-Broadway run at Emerson's Colonial Theater, which is a gorgeous place to see a production. It's there through August 25th. For information and to get tickets, go to emersoncolonialtheater.com. That's emersoncolonialtheater.com. Thank you both again so much for being here. Thank you very much, Greg, for being here. And Murray, oh, those are my sunglasses. That's right. I try to be cool when I leave the studio in my sunglasses. Okay, after a quick break, we're going to talk with CNN's John King. He's going to zoom into the Boston Public Library. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
The Moth Radio Hour has been sharing spellbinding stories and tales since 2009, and now is your chance to see it live, on stage. This October, The Moth will be at the Wilbur Theater, and GBH has your tickets to see it. Come hear some of the best storytellers work their craft, sharing true tales live and in person. Learn more and reserve your seats today at gbh.org/moth.
Support for GBH comes from you and MIT Federal Credit Union, helping individuals achieve their financial goals with a range of savings account options, including high-yield money market accounts, federally insured by NCUA. Learn more about membership at mitfcu.org. And Comcast, offering Xfinity Internet, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. More information at xfinity.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday. We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, behind some great reporting projects this election cycle. Most recently, all over the map, visited the suburbs of my hometown of Philadelphia. We'll talk to John about that. John, welcome. Good to talk to you.
Great to see you. Happy Tuesday. You're getting another rental car shot from me. This one is Waterloo, Iowa today. But,
you're in Iowa?
Yes, fresh from New York City last night. I'm in Iowa.
We're having a little mic problem here. We're good now. We're fine. Go ahead.
Now. Okay, I was going to
People
say,
here, he's in Waterloo, Iowa. I don't know if people heard that. Okay.
I saw you last night in New York, and you were reporting from Philadelphia suburbs, so you're all over the place, John King. But tell us, since in the last...
So we decided, this is interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, well, tell us what you were going to say. What were you going to say?
Just going to say that we decided, a year ago was our first piece, and we decided from all over the map. So we decided to come back to our Republican group in Iowa because we're talking about all these big changes in the race and all the energy in the Democratic Party, and it's a big, huge story right now. It's the most significant story. But so we wanted to come back to our Republican group before the Democratic convention to ask them what they think of the big changes. Iowa obviously is not a battleground state, most unlikely to be competitive. But we want to see, do they think Trump should be talking more about policy and less about Harris's heritage? Things like that, just to touch in with our group. We got a great group out here. We just wanted to come say hi.
Before we talk about this really interesting reporting you did, as I say, from the suburbs of Philly, before that was played last night on Anderson Cooper's show, you did some polling comparisons of May when Joe Biden was the presumptive nominee of the party, and now August when Kamala Harris is. Can you give us some of the most striking parts of that to you, John King?
A couple of things jump out. Number one, her support among women compared to the president is off the charts. Now we have the traditional gender gap is back, and she has a giant lead among women. Her support in urban areas is way up, which means what? It means the black-based African Americans have come back to the Democratic Party in urban America. Her support, Biden and Trump back in May were running about even in the suburbs. Biden was +2, so within the poll margin of error. Harris is now plus 11 in the suburbs. These were in battleground states. It's New York Times, Siena College polling in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. The earlier May polling also included Arizona and Georgia. But it just shows it's not exactly apples and apples, so you have to be careful. You're comparing slightly different polls, but they're in the same areas, asking the same voters. And there's just no question. Number one, the fundamental challenge for Harris was to revive and energize the Democratic base. That's the building block of anything, is you got to get your own people back first, right? And then you can try to expand. She has done that. Not perfect yet. Still has some issues with younger voters. Still has some issues maybe with black men. But she has fundamentally changed the race by bringing home most of the key pieces of the Biden 2020 coalition, which makes her competitive and actually ahead of Trump, or at least within the margin of error. But that her number is bigger than Trump in some of the battleground states where just weeks ago Biden was losing.
Of course, my friends that are very worried about Donald Trump are worried that this too may be just a so-called honeymoon, and that things will go well at the DNC, we presume, next week, and that things will go well, and that something's going to happen. There's going to be some catastrophe. But she's pretty well vetted already as the vice president, and Walz is pretty well vetted as the governor of Minnesota. So I don't know.
When you step to this level, there's always something, right? There's always more scrutiny, number one. Governor Walz has had to deal with the fact that he misspoke or said things that were not true about his military service once or twice. And how you handle that can matter. Look, if the Republicans are trying to say he's lying about his military record, I have a hard time thinking the Republicans can make a case about lying when Donald Trump is their candidate for president. However, you never know in a campaign. And so now so Governor Walz is going to answer some questions, but by and large, Democrats are thrilled, beyond thrilled, with his start as her running mate. And they think he's proven to be an asset, both on the road, but also fundraising and keeping, again, Democrats excited. When it comes to the vice president, Marjorie, I think the biggest question is, voters legitimately, even Democrats, say, who is she? Who is she? They know she's Joe Biden's vice president, but what does she want to do? How would she be the same, and how would she be different? Does she still believe all the things she said early on in 1999 when she was running back in 2000? Does she believe she was more to the left then? All the Democrats were racing to the left to try to create a lane other than Joe Biden. And so her views on, she's moved to the middle on a lot of issues to be Joe Biden's vice president. But who is she? I think that's the opportunity and also the huge challenge she has with the Democratic convention. Trump and Trump's allies are going to start dumping tens of millions of dollars on TV ads, saying, she's a San Francisco liberal way to the left of the country, right? They're going to try to Dukakis her, if you want to go back in time. They're going to try to Dukakis her. And the question is, can she convince people that's not me? This is who I am, before the Republicans do that. That's the phase of the campaign we're in right now, I would say through Labor Day and a little bit after that. She's going to get all the attention. She did get a bit of a honeymoon. Anyone would after a big shakeup like this. Trump got a bit of a honeymoon after the guy took a shot at him, as he deserved to, because his reaction to it was to show resilience. But she has an opportunity now through the convention. And then the question is, can she keep it going after the convention? When we are talking the Tuesday after Labor Day, are we still in the same race, or has it changed again?
John King, one of the odd things, being an observer of this, is Trump lies so much and switches positions so often that too many of us just accept, well, it's sort of Trump being Trump. But when Harris is, let's be kind, modifying positions, and maybe in this one case I'm going to ask you about, more than modifying, there is the kind of attention, in my opinion, there should be when someone does a 180, like when Vance called him America's Hitler, and now all of a sudden he's the savior, he being Trump. Fracking is a huge issue about extracting energy. I'm sure people know about it. She was against it in 2020. It's a critical issue, far better than I, in the critical state of Pennsylvania. What is she doing about it, and how's that going to play for her, do you think?
Well, again, when she says now, I'm okay with some fracking, the Republicans are going to say, well, wait a minute, you're a hypocrite, you changed your position. I just said so you're going to Dukakis her, they're going to John Kerry her. She was against it before she was for it, right? We're going to go back in time here. We're having a little campaign nostalgia as we go through all this. But this is how campaigns work, right? If you change your position on something, you can expect to be hammered by the other side. So the challenge is, and this is where Biden was failing, is to communicate what you're doing, whether it's completely consistent with what you've done for 100 years, or if you've changed your mind about something or modified your position on something. Your challenge is to communicate with voters. Number one, to have them trust you or have them listen to you. Harris has that right now. The electorate is listening to her. That's one of the things we learned in Pennsylvania. Even Republicans who think, oh, she's probably a little too liberal for me, or I heard about some immigration stuff I don't like, or how she treats herself. They say, but I want to listen to her. She's new, and she has this opportunity. If you change your position on something, you have to look voters in the eye. And again, the convention gives you a great chance. She's got an economic speech coming next week in North Carolina to look in the eye and say, yes, I was once for this. Now I'm for this. And this is why. Explain yourself. I mean, everybody listening, if you've never changed your mind, raise your hand. Right? Everybody changes their mind. And look, and some politicians, God forbid, change their mind for political purposes. Right. And so how do you say that without saying it just like that? That sounded pretty crass. Right. But how can you say, I've come to learn, or now I understand Pennsylvania better? And maybe, the voters will fill in the part and the 19 electoral votes. They'll do that for you if you at least are candid that you've made a change.
We're talking to CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. The Trump camp is complaining and saying that she's never been without a teleprompter and she's not giving any interviews or press conferences. Wouldn't that be a good idea just to kind of, if you come into a debate or you come too long and you haven't had a press conference, you're kind of out of practice. What do you think?
I think at some point, especially because that's going to be the criticism, that you can't trust her, that she's fake, that she's an actor, whatever they're going to use, she's not genuine. Whatever, they'll use polite language about that, and they'll use some impolite language about that she's a fraud or you don't know what she believes. Yeah, they're going to have to do that at some point. As somebody who works in this business, I wish she did it yesterday. As vice president, even, that she was more accessible. The president obviously was doing very little until they felt he had to do something. So yes, I do think, and you've seen a couple of magazine interviews in the last few days come up in generally friendly territory. And again, those of us in the business say, oh, come on, do a tough interview. But if you were working for her, that's exactly how you would do it. So again, the challenge is the arc. She has the momentum right now. She's riding a wave. Democratic enthusiasm is up. Key swing voters are giving her a chance. They have Donald Trump on his heels, and he's making some mistakes in how he does things. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But absolutely, again, coming out of the convention, assuming she keeps the momentum coming out of the convention, then she's in a position to win the race. You might even be making the case that she's actually driving the race now. After Trump driving the race throughout the summer, that she's actually driving the race right now. At some point, she and the people around her are going to say, okay, let's check that box. We need to do it. And I just think, take Kamala Harris out of the equation, I think any candidate for president should have to do that. I would also say, I think she should do several legitimate big interviews, and she should do them on a regular basis. I will also say this, though, and that so the Republicans criticizing her, they're going to say, oh, Mr. Trump, maybe you should not just do your sycophant friends in the podcast arena and just Fox News. If you're going to make the case against her, where is he?
Yeah.
We're talking to John King, who is in Waterloo, Iowa. John, I want to play a little sound. You interviewed a bunch of Republicans in, as I say, the suburbs outside Philadelphia, and it played last night and this morning. And these are people Republicans who are not crazy about Donald Trump. Here's just a little sampling of the people with whom you spoke.
I'm still not going to vote for Trump regardless. So I'm not excited about voting for Kamala Harris, but it's better than the alternative.
My street was rock-ribbed Republican. Now you have to shake a stick to find a Republican. And I watch his campaign rallies. It's all about him. It's not about the country.
What was your takeaway from your visits with these Republicans in Pennsylvania there, John King?
That in Michael Pacey's case, the first gentleman you heard there, Reagan Republican, joined the Coast Guard as a young man, voted for Nikki Haley, would love to be voting for a mainstream Republican, and will never vote for Donald Trump. And so he's willing to say, look, Harris is a decent person. I disagree with her on a lot of things, but I'm voting for her because I trust her as a human being. I trust her character over Donald Trump. Cynthia there, Sabatini, a little bit different. She wrote in Senator Susan Collins of Maine in 2016. He couldn't vote for Trump, right? So Susan Collins of Maine at least had one vote for president in 2016 in Pennsylvania. And then Trump won, right? These never-Trumpers are important to me. There's a lot of complicated subgroups in politics, so one group doesn't make the difference entirely. But she voted third. She wrote in a candidate in 2016. Trump won Pennsylvania and the White House. She voted for Biden in 2020. Biden won Pennsylvania and the White House. So she's inclined at the moment to do a write-in again, but she remembers 2016. She does not want Trump back in the White House. So she says, I'm going to give Harris a chance. That's the opportunity I'm talking about. She has an opportunity to talk to people whose DNA says, don't do it. but whose brain and heart are telling them, listen, give her a chance.
By the way, I should just say, in the spirit of full disclosure, while we really learned a lot from your reporting, I know I speak for Marjorie, we were both troubled that you didn't either play pickleball or bowl in this particular segment. So please fix that when you're in Waterloo today, John Kane.
Michael forgot his fishing rods. We were going to fish. But okay, I will find some stunt dummy thing to do.
Okay. So I would expect that there are going to be major demonstrations next week at the Democratic National Convention regarding people who are very, very upset about what is going on in Gaza. And they could get huge and raucous. How does that impact the Harris effort if they do?
Well, she needs the votes. And so you can look at it that way. There have been some conversations with members of the uncommitted. Remember in the primaries when people were voted uncommitted? Yep. Most of that were people who were angry at President Biden about the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Harris campaign has smartly, but it's just logical, not me taking sides, reached out to them and started to have a dialogue with them. That does not mean there won't be protests. I think there's less air in that balloon, still a lot of air in that balloon, but less air that it's her, not the president, not President Biden as the candidate. But again, that's one of the challenges. I mean, if you look, her polling, just take the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the polling has improved dramatically. She's in a position in all those states. But in Michigan, right, a lot of those, a couple 100,000 Arab American, Muslim American votes in Michigan that went to the Democrats. The young voters we've talked to throughout the last year in Michigan who want to vote for the Democrats, some of them, this has become a cause, and they say they can't. I'm a broken record. But she's new, she's different. They are willing to listen to her. The challenge is, can she do anything different? And this is a case where, some of her standing will be tied to what happens in the world and what her boss, President Biden, does. And you see the administration, I'm not connecting it to the campaign, but for legitimate, understandable reasons, trying to push again today and tomorrow to get a ceasefire in the works. That is something that could help. That is a development in the world that would significantly help the vice president if it happened. But we've come close. How many times? How many times have we come? We thought we were on the verge of that, and it's collapsed. But that would be a policy achievement that would end up to her political benefit if it happens. Otherwise, we're going to have to see A, how it plays out, and B, again, how she handles it when she's at the convention. Does she talk about respecting them? Does she give uncommitted people a chance to speak at the convention? Do you create some space and say, I know we have a disagreement, but I respect you so much, I'm going to give you some time. So let's watch all that play out.
Does she have to carry Biden's water now that she's running for president? It seems to me that she is not quite as happy. Well, Biden's not happy with Netanyahu either, but she seems to be not in the same place as Biden is on the whole Gaza-Israel situation. She seems to be more, she talks more about what's happened to the people in Gaza.
And she was very critical of Israel after the school bombing the other day.
Yeah, so how does that work? When you're the vice president, do you have to keep saying, I agree totally with President Biden, or can she carve her own path?
It's really tough. It's really tough. I remember covering the Gore campaign. There were a few things on which Gore wanted to get away from Clinton. Some of it was the Monica Lewinsky and the character stuff, but other of it was policies where they wanted to have some differences there. It's really hard because you pledge your loyalty to the boss, and so if you noticed her statement after her meeting with Netanyahu was much more nuanced.
Yes.
Part of it is not to be critical of the president, but the president just does not communicate very well. Especially right now. He does not give long speeches. He does not talk off the cuff. I know what she said after that was written and prepared for her, but she gave she said, this is complicated. This is nuanced. Please hear me out. But she was much more critical of Netanyahu and the civilian deaths, the women and children dying, than Biden has been publicly. Biden has done it in a short way. She did it in, I thought, a very passionate and emotional way. We agree or disagree with her. And so, again, she has this moment. And when you have a moment, whether it's the interviews, whether it's a difficult policy issue, you and your team have to think about, when do we spend some of our capital? And do we spend some of our capital on this issue right now? And as you do that, do you find a way? You can't throw the president under the bus. He's your boss. You're the vice president. But you find a way to say, this is how I'd handle it a little bit differently. She has to be careful about that, which is why in the short term, she uses the words she's used so far, and you just hope and pray that there is some ceasefire that comes into effect.
John, one last thing about the other side of the aisle. There was some conversation surrounding your standing at the Magic Wall and doing your report out of Pennsylvania. by the panelists on CNN last night in a serious way, discussing the possibility that Trump could wake up one morning and tell his staff, get rid of Vance, get me somebody new. Does that pass? I mean, he clearly is that impulsive, but does it pass the laugh test that there's a point at which he may say, this guy is really hurting me and I got to move on?
I never say never when it comes to Donald Trump, because you're right, he is repulsive. But remember think about all the time we just spent on Vice President Harris saying the most important building block in any election is you have to get all your people, solve any family problems first. Get your base secured, pumped up, ready to go. Biden didn't have that. Harris now does. If Trump were to dump Vance at this moment, he would have a problem in his base. He would be creating, you think you're solving a problem and you create a problem. So do they have some math, some calculation, some data? I have no evidence, zero evidence that he's thinking about that, by the way. There are a lot of Republicans who are unhappy with Vance. Most of them are the same Republicans who argued against picking Vance. That's how politics works. I see zero evidence he would do that. But if he were to do that, he might think, in the Philadelphia suburbs, for example, a lot of those women, either women who had children late in life or women who have not had children, or even women with children, just think it was insensitive, it was callous. Men, essentially, shut up, dude. Forgive me, but shut up. Men shouldn't be talking about this. None of your business. So yeah, it might help Trump in the Philadelphia suburbs, but it might hurt him in Western Pennsylvania with the Trumpies who love Vance.
Yeah. John, have a good time in Waterloo, Iowa.
Have a good
time. Next time we talk to you, it'll be in the midst of the convention, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we can't wait to see your next reporting, John. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon. We've been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, who, of course, is a Dorchester guy. He's behind two great reporting projects this election cycle, all over the map and the battleground. And, they have been fascinating to listen to people.
Because you see real people rather than numbers.
And he gives a chance to people to express their opinion, what they think about the country, what they think about the presidential race. It's really great.
I'll say it again, by the way. There's nobody in the business who is more respectful of people of broadest political spectrum of ideas than John King, which is one of the reasons he gets so much out of them, because he treats them respectfully.
Okay. We had this conversation once before.
We did.
And I cannot really express the passion that our listeners and our callers
it's a big issue.
expressed on this issue. It is,
surprising.
of course, the dishwasher discourse.
Yeah.
How do you stack your dishwasher? Apparently, the Washington Post thinks they have cracked the code. They have had the definitive debate, and they have figured out the right way to stack your dishwasher. And we're going to ask you how you load yours and whether this is cause for marital or partner or roommate discord in your home. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, as we near the 50th anniversary of the Boston busing crisis, Embrace Boston's Imari Paris Jeffries joins us to look at the roles that both Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King played in Boston regarding school desegregation. Plus, if art returned as an official Olympic sport, in Somerville, there's a gym for that. And we preview the latest event coming out of the New Gallery concert series. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, providing resources and tools to help you navigate the college planning process, including customized plans of savings, loans, and guidance. More information at mefa.org. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow with a local author who's going to share her personal story growing up in Appalachia and how it contrasts with the story of J.D. Vance. But right now we have far more important things to discuss, as Marjorie mentioned, like the correct way to load a dishwasher. The reason we're revisiting this topic is because, as Marjorie said, the Washington Post claims to have the definitive guide. big dishes in pots and pans on the bottom, Tupperware on top, no wooden spoons anywhere, plus the age-old question, to pre-rinse or not to pre-rinse, tines up or tines down. What are tines? That's another issue. The lines are open at 877-301-8970. Have differing views on dishwasher technique caused domestic strife in your life?
Yes.
Is one person in the household forbidden from loading the dishwasher altogether? And more broadly, are you more of a throw it all in there and let the machine do its thing? That would be Marjorie. Or is there a method to the loading that must be followed at all times? That would be me. The number is 877-301-8970. How do you load your dishwasher and why?
I don't throw it all in there. I have a very distinctive
I'm
method.
dying to hear this.
Very
What is
distinctive
it?
method.
What is
I
it?
put all the plates in the bottom, and this says I'm right to do all that. And you put them all toward facing the middle so they all get the sprayer. And you put your cups and mugs on top. And the tines are the things that stick up. What I learned from this, you're not supposed to put any glassware around the tines. You're supposed to put them between the tines so as not to stress the glass. And
do you pre-rinse or you do not pre-rinse?
So I had the dishwasher.
Oh, you notice she's avoiding the question here.
Here's why.
Why is that?
I always used to rinse.
Oh.
And then I had the guy from Yale Electric come over and fix my dishwasher because I was having a problem with my dishwasher. And the guy from Yale Electric says, you should never pre-rinse.
Well, why is that?
Because the detergent that you use is activated to scrub by the little food scraps on the dishes, so you should not pre-rinse. But I must admit, Jim, I feel funny about not rinsing.
Well, let me just say, in the words of Donald Trump of old, that would be wrong. Remember when he used to say, what happened to wrong?
I don't know.
Why does he say that anymore?
But he's still doing this.
You know what
with
the problem
hands.
is? How gross is it to put dishes in? I don't care what the Yale guy says. Put dishes in the dishwasher that are laden with crap on them, but you rinse them off until the stuff is off, and then you put it in the slots there.
Okay.
And by the way,
definitive...
you didn't know not to put wooden stuff in there until you read this story.
And I didn't know about knives. I mean, what's wrong with putting knives in the dishwasher?
They didn't say you can't put knives in the
They
dishwasher.
did. They
say,
don't. No one fell for the cast iron or crystal. They're talking about things you're not supposed to put in there.
Well, obviously you don't put cast iron in.
You don't put cast iron or crystal.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you couldn't put knives or wooden spoons.
Where does it say you can't put knives?
Jim, you have to read the story.
No, that means you can't find it. What does it say?
Second line.
Please read it to me. I want to hear it. Go ahead.
What they did, they had colleagues at the Washington Post loading dishwashers in the test kitchen.
Yes, they did.
Who thought they would have a test kitchen at the Washington Post?
Exactly right.
While narrating their process on video.
Yeah.
Each had the same assortment of plates.
They did.
Because they were trying to fool them.
Exactly.
They had bowls, glasses, mugs, silverware, pots, pans. The caveat that they didn't have to try to fit everything into the machine. They even threw in a few traps for them. And you know what the traps were?
No.
Cast iron, crystal, knives, and a wooden spoon.
You put knives? Who says you don't put knives in the dishwasher?
The Washington Post, they've done the definitive study.
They have no idea what they're talking about. You do. 877-301-8097. This is actually something that matters a lot to me. Yeah, there's certain things that are relatively small that if they're not done right, cause you great anxiety. Do you have any of those things in your life? You have everything like that in your life.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, little things. Really, some might say, if you're listening to the show, which hopefully they are, who cares how you load the dishwasher? My response to that is, I care how you list the dishwasher.
It's a big deal.
And it matters a lot to me.
What happens if you go, like if I go to my sister's house, I was there this weekend.
What happened?
Well, she rearranges everything.
I don't like
put
that.
in the dishwasher.
Wait, you put it in and then she moves it?
Lots of people do that, Jim.
Once it's in?
Lots of people do that. Once it's in, they rearrange it.
And do you stand up for yourself or you
don't?
No,
I mean, I'm in her kitchen. If she wants to load the dishwasher, she can load the dishwasher.
What if it was at your house?
We have bigger fish to fry.
What if it was at your house where she moved the items in the dishwasher? Would you stand up to her then?
I would have to rearrange them.
I don't think so.
Don't you rearrange them when they're put in wrong?
Of course.
Of course. Everybody does.
Just like F. Murray Abraham. What was he called? The king of timeshares?
Yeah.
I am the king of dishwasher loading. I am telling you, it's one of the things I really know well.
Carol from New Hampshire.
Carol.
Thank you for calling.
Hello, Carol.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
I want to just say at the beginning, the Washington Post is going down.
Okay.
Why, Carol?
Perfection. Well, because I've got a system in our house, top shelf, the top rack, coffee cups, small glasses, small plates, and bottom dinner plates, soup bowls, etc., etc. So silverware, I mix mine up, and you have they're divided. The little tray is divided.
Yep.
I have knives. I use everyday knives, not your good cutting knives. Those don't belong in a dishwasher.
Why not?
But,
Why not?
Everyday knives.
What's the matter with cutting knives?
Blade, actually.
Oh, really?
You do?
I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Yeah.
No.
Have you invested good money in a good knife?
Yes, I have. I like knives.
Everybody's saying that. Jeff in Andover says the same thing. Do not
Carol.
put sharp knives in the dishwasher as they will become dull.
Okay, Carol, you profess to be an
Consensus is
expert,
emerging.
but an expert would not have excluded plasticware. Where do you put plasticware in the dishwasher? This will be the true test. What's the answer?
It does not belong in a dishwasher. Number one, we should be using glass for food storage, not
Oh, she
plastic.
did it to me there.
And
Go
number
ahead.
two,
Yeah.
my husband is a big yogurt eater, so when he puts a yogurt container in the dishwasher,
Oh, no.
I'm ready to choke him. Track him down and choke him.
Carol, you're our hero. I don't agree with you on everything, but your
Well,
passion is really impressive.
Carol
Thank you.
touched on one of the big issues. This can cause tremendous strife within the marriage or the committed partnership. But Benjamin in Brighton has a solution. If you're concerned about dishwashing loading related strife, might I suggest move to Boston. Your $2,000 or $3,000 a month apartment will not have a dishwasher, and your marriage is now saved. That is a great point.
You know what Zoe just said, our coworker?
What?
Zoe just said, you know, you say you're an expert on dishwashing, and she mentioned she's never seen me wash a plate in the sinks at GBH. Have you?
You know, I won't say what you do in the studio in Brighton, Jim. It's really out of bounds.
Well, why'd you say that?
Barb from
Why'd you say that
We're
much
moving on.
then?
We're moving on. Barb from
That was
Somerville.
really inappropriate.
Hi, Barb.
I thought it was very appropriate, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Quick. Number one, the Washington Post, some of the things they said were really silly. And one thing they said that was great is let the dishwasher do its job, because modern dishwashers are so good.
That's
with
right.
Energy and water usage.
That's right.
So let the dishwasher do its job. My ex-husband used to rearrange the dishes. Notice the preface for the
Ex-husband.
We did notice,
We noticed
yes.
that.
Drove me insane. My current wonderful partner, we just bought a new dishwasher. He's way pickier about how it's loaded. And guess who picked it out? Not me.
Wow.
Now,
It's
Barb.
beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Now, Barb, I don't want to go into painful territory,
go,
but
do it.
do you think that the dishwasher loading was spelled the demise of your first marriage?
No, it's probably 29 on the list of 30.
Okay. But it was there.
Hearing
It was
people
there.
talk about, hearing people talk about the rearranging, I was like, I completely get it.
Yeah.
So, Barb, don't go away, because obviously you have some expertise. We're having a little internal dispute here between two of our coworkers, Aiden and Zoe. Here's what Aiden asked: whether to put forks, knives, and spoons right side up or upside down in the little utensil holder. Aiden says, I say right side up, whatever that means. So the part
How
that
many
goes in your...
fingers does he have?
Wait a second. So the
Exactly.
fingers that go in your mouth can get full coverage from the dishwasher. And Zoe says, I disagree. I hate the sensory experience of touching the
Okay.
tines in order to place them in the dishwasher.
The Washington Post has an answer.
What did they say?
They say, as Aiden points out, that they do get cleaner if you put the mouth
Barb's
part
gone.
high up. However, if
Wait,
you
put
have,
the mouth part.
Yes.
Yeah.
But however, if you
Because
have
there's more water pressure.
yes, but if you have children in the
Mouth
house,
part.
you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because the children might, as one of my kids did.
Yeah, put their hand in it.
Yeah, cut her
Let me just say
hand
to
on
you,
the
I don't know
knife.
if
It
you're
was
aware of
terrible.
this. Most people don't refer to that as the mouth part of the
Okay,
utensil.
what do you want to call it?
I mean, a spoon is the... Oh, it's the mouth part. Actually, it is. There is... It is the,
the part
mouth
of the
part
fork or
that
the
goes in your
spoon that
mouth.
goes in your mouth,
That's
or
a
the
very good
sharp
point.
part of the knife. You want to have that down. It's more safe. Of
course.
It's safer to have it down, I should say.
Well, knives
But
down,
cleaner
forks and
to have it
spoons up
Well,
is my
a fork
motto.
can be pretty sharp if you have
can?
a kid. Yes.
Okay, fine.
If you have kids falling on
How
it.
many times do you use the word tine in a sentence?
I've
in your
never
whole
used
life?
the word tine. I didn't even know they were called tines.
No, I'm talking about forks. Those are tines on a fork.
They're tine. I did not know
Aren't
that,
they,
Jim.
Jamie,
I
are
don't
they
know.
tines on a fork?
I only know about balustrades.
Well, what are you talking about? What are
balustrades
tines?
on the banisters.
What
I
are
know that.
tines in your
Tines
estimate?
are the things in the dishwasher, aren't they? That
The
hold
little
up
sticky upper thing?
I think so.
They the things you put in your mouth?
No, they're not the things you put
No, I
in
was
your mouth.
kidding there.
The
Go ahead.
things you put.
Okay, whatever. David in Tiverton, Rhode Island. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Hello there.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie. How are you guys doing?
Fine,
Great.
thank you.
And my friend Erica Heller, the writer, says, in every relationship, one person loads the dishwasher like a Swiss architect, and the other like a rabid raccoon on steroids.
That's a great line.
That's a great line. David, it's a terrible connection,
We gotta
though,
let
but
you go.
thank you very much for the
Okay,
call.
so here's the
Listen
deal.
to this. Did you see John in Medford?
Yeah, read it. It's very
In
important.
college, he had no dishwasher, so he put his dirty dishes in the refrigerator and reused them in the next day or two.
You didn't do that in college.
I was pretty sloppy.
Neither did I. Now, someone.
Tines are the teeth of the fork.
Yeah, I know. I said
Yeah.
that.
Aren't they
someone
also
said,
the part of the dishwasher, though, that
Yeah,
sticks
well,
up?
I didn't know that till today. But
Okay.
here is the deal. On a spoon, these are the pieces. The handle is the handle. I know that doesn't help you very much. The neck is the thing that attaches the handle
to the bowl.
To the bowl. Have you ever called that the bowl in your life? The bowl.
And then
That's the
end
mouth part.
of the bowl is the tip.
The tip.
Okay.
That's what they say.
Bill and Pelham, what do you think, Bill?
Hey, Bill.
Oh, how are you?
I think we're good.
I'm a personal chef. Called a couple of times. about
thank
this,
you.
And, oh, yeah. You folks are great. And I do pre-Zoom cooking classes. We used to have a Knife Skills Wednesday class. And you never, ever want to put even a cheap knife. You don't want to put knives in your
I didn't
dishwasher.
know this.
A couple reasons. One, because unless it's sitting there on its own, which it never is, it's going to be nestled up against glass or whatever, it's going to start dulling the knife.
Right.
And the hot water, it's going to be in there for 2-3 hours and then steaming overnight as it's done washing. It's just going to degrade the handle. And so all the money you put into this great knife is just going to go down the drain.
I have to say, I did not know this.
Neither did
and
I.
really value knives. I'm going to change my behavior starting tonight, Bill.
But Bill, what I think is this Washington Post piece is the sharp cutting knives you don't want to put. But
he
regular
says
knives,
no knives, even crappy knives
like
you
a
shouldn't
butter
do.
knife, though, like a
I
knife
don't
that's
know
not that
about that.
sharp. I think you can use those because you're not that worried about how sharp.
What
the
else do you
knife
have,
is.
Bill, here? What else do you have?
I'm very orderly about my what goes into the dishwasher. Glassware on top, trying to keep it as orderly so you can squeeze as much stuff into it. You want to get the most out of your wash.
Now, as
So,
a personal chef,
and I do-
we have a question for you. Yep. How do you feel about sporks?
Yes.
What do you think about sporks? Exactly.
Well, I haven't used one in about 30 years, but I do have fond memories.
Oh, well, that's good enough for us.
What's a spork?
Spork is a spoon and a fork on one utensil. You've never seen a spork?
I missed out on that
Oh,
one.
they're
Jim.
incredible.
I missed
Bill,
out on
thanks
that
for an excellent call. We appreciate it.
The best way to load a dishwasher is never to load one. This woman says she's a French woman and she only tried to load the evil thing a few times. People are so anal about it.
They are
She has
anal.
not tried to load a dishwasher for at least 30 years.
That's a great story. Now, Zoe does not have a dishwasher. Did you learn that this morning when we were talking to her?
I did not, but she's
Well,
very upset about it. I can
No,
tell.
she's not upset about it. But
Okay.
the second thing is, do you not find some joy in hand washing dishes from time to time?
Yeah.
And then putting them in a little rack on the side of the thing.
That's right.
So they dry off by themselves. What do you think of that?
Well, in all these mindfulness classes, they talk about that's one of the exercises they
Is it
have
really?
you do is to stand at the dishwash at the
Sink.
sink with your sponge or your dishcloth, whatever you're using to wash the dishes, and enjoy the sensation of washing the dishes and the bubbles and the smell, and then to put them in the dish.
So do you do
drain.
that? You're a mindfulness person.
I don't. No, I don't.
By the
throw
way,
them
I
in the
was wrong
dishwasher.
about a spork. And thank you, Jamie, for correcting me. A spork is not a spoon and a fork at opposite ends. A spork is a fork in the shape of a spoon, so you can use it as a spoon or as a fork. Do you understand the concept?
How can a fork, which has
Look at
three...
the picture right there. What do you think of that?
Oh, okay. So it has a little bowl, and then it has the
Little bowl.
tines at the
Now
end.
we're going to start talking about the bowl on a spoon, which we've never mentioned in our whole lives. What do you think of that?
You know, a lot of people get really annoyed by someone else rearranging.
Oh, like your sister.
Yes. People find it very, very
How much is that
very
an
upsetting.
issue of controversy between the two of you?
It's a big controversy.
It is?
We've almost come to blows, Liz.
Have you really? You probably have.
Yeah, you see us in the media on the front page of the Cape Cod Times. You'll know it was a dishwasher that pushed me over the edge.
Okay,
Let's
Linda
go
in
to Linda
Oxford.
in Oxford. Hi, Linda.
Hi,
Hi.
second time caller.
Thank you.
I love you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to tell Margie that the reason why the electrician told her that she shouldn't rinse dishes, especially since she has an older dishwasher, is because he wants more work. He wants to come back and unplug it again.
That could be true.
That's a
That
good
could
one.
be true. But
That's definitely true.
Yeah, but it is a thing that they talk about in this story, that the particles in your whatever your dishwasher is are more attracted to the little specks of food.
Did they actually say that, or they just said it's not necessary to rinse? Linda, thank you for the call. I
Especially for newer dishwashers. I actually have a newer dishwasher. It's not that old. It's about 5 years old. I like it very much. They do talk about that in the piece, but I can't find the exact place where they mention
Do you
it.
know what a chork is? I didn't know this till one of our coworkers, Nicole, put it up. You know what a chork is?
Yes, it's a thing with chopsticks.
Chopsticks on one end and a fork on the other. That's pretty great, actually.
Now, this piece, again, going back to the Washington Post,
Yes, please.
that many married couples do take things seriously. And there's this person named Jessica who's the Senior Director of Digital Communications for the American Cleaning Institute.
Wow.
She says she knows of couples who include dishwasher-related rules in their wedding vows.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Imagine that.
I think Melania and Donald Trump did that, actually. I believe that's one of the bones of contention, so
Mike
to speak.
in Woodstock.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Fine,
Excellent.
thank you.
For asking. What's up?
Yeah, the obvious thing is you got to do the Donald Trump and just throw your plate against the wall.
Oh, that's right. He did that.
Right.
I forgot.
That's right. That Cassidy Hutchinson talked about
When
that.
he was in the dining room
when
next to the...
Yeah, he just throw everything with ketchup and the hamburger and the mustard, everything else right against the wall. I know someone who throws things against the wall, too,
we're not.
Mike.
And can I tell you, in all seriousness, this is a really unfortunate direction
Okay.
you were taking.
Okay.
Mike, that was excellent. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Jim
Thank
was
you.
inspired by Donald Trump.
I'm not inspired by Donald Trump. And let's move on from that, Marjorie.
Jen in Andover, what do you think?
Hi, Jen in Andover.
Hey, I just had a comment about the dishwasher situation. You know, after 12 years of being with my now spouse, I've decided the best thing to do is just to take a deep breath, relinquish control, and let him take care of it and not
Wow.
worry about it. And if there's clean dishes, I'm just going to say thank you.
And if they're not,
Well, if they're not clean, it's probably because I put regular soap in there instead of dishwasher detergent, and I not only clean the dishes, I also clean the whole floor.
you are a grown-up person there, Jen. Thank you for the call. By the
Now,
way, what's that?
Here's another version. This is Jared
What
from
is it?
Brighton, the opposite side. His girlfriend loads the dishwasher like a newborn, trying to use the matching shapes puzzle. She just jams things in the closest slot without a care for efficiency. He always rearranges, and if he hears her turn it on, he goes and stops it to see if things need to be rearranged. He is a man who will not be thwarted.
He is one anal kind of guy, is he not? Do we have Carol? We're getting a lot of requests texting people. Carol from New Hampshire is their hero. Here's what Carol had to say about her husband, her current husband, if she is upset with how he has arranged the dishwasher. Here's Carol.
I'm ready to choke him. Track him down and choke him.
I mean, it's a woman who has a point of view. I love a person with a point of view.
Okay.
Exactly. We heard you the first time, Carol. Thank you.
Apparently, Consumer Report says you're not supposed to put any plastic in the dishwasher because during the wash it releases microplastics onto other stuff in the wash and onto your utensils. I guess we have enough microplastics. Now, we all have a credit card worth of microplastics
Yeah, we do.
inside of us. Nursing mothers have microplastics in the milk. I mean, it's everywhere.
Every day on earth is like eating a credit card. That's what it is. Eating one credit card.
Right.
By the way, let me just talk about plastic because the time is almost up. If you have no choice, you got to wash the plastic. You wash it on the top rack. Do you know that? Because the force of the water is less and it won't knock the thing over. You know what's one of the worst?
What?
When you have a little plastic container and the force of the water knocks it over, and when you open the dishwasher, it's full with soapy water. Doesn't that upset you?
That's really upsetting.
It's really
Jim.
upsetting.
It's not easy to have to put
No,
up
it's
with
not.
that. Yep.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, is that it? We're done?
That's it. We're done, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It
End
went
of the
so
show.
fast.
I went so
I didn't
fast.
get to. I have all these great texts.
Can
here.
we
I
hear
didn't
from
get a chance to
Carol
read
one
them.
more time, please? Please.
I'm ready to choke him. Track him down and choke him.
Choke him. Okay, that's sort of our motto when it comes to dishwashing disputes in the family.
Yeah, Carol,
Thank you,
I
Carol.
relate completely
Really appreciate
to that
it.
sentiment.
Thank you.
Okay, we are done. as
She's
Jim
not
pointed out.
generally a violent person, Carol is, from what I understand.
One wrong